Good afternoon. The time is now 1:24 p.m. and a quorum of the board is present. The State Board of Education regular meeting of November 9th, 2021 is called to order. Board, we will have a very quick vote on the meeting minutes, regular and committee of the whole of October 12th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So move.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Marilyn, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Abstain.
Snyder?
Yes.
Strayhorn absent. Tilly? Tiffany Tilly? If you are connected, Ms. Tilly, you are maybe muted. Is Tiffany Tilly on the phone?
I don't believe she is.
You think she is?
I don't believe she is.
Okay.
We need her vote.
We do.
Tiffany Tilly, have you joined? Okay, absent. Motion fails.
Okay, very good. We're on to public participation. Marilyn, are there individuals who wish to address the board today during the meeting?
There are individuals who wish to address the board. We have some people in person, which we will begin with, and then we will also go to virtual participation. We have some individuals who want to take advantage of that opportunity. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board. I will keep a timer, and you can, if you're in the room, you can monitor it here. It's practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for all people, and those disrespecting anyone by name or otherwise will be asked to cease. So those are the ground rules, and I will tell you who's first. Lena Kaufman. Is Lena Kaufman here? And she's coming to the table with, I believe, Anna Hoffman. Is that right? And then the next person would be Connie Robinson. We are ready when you are ready.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you all today. I'm Lena Kaufman. I'm a mom of 3 from Ann Arbor.
And I'm Anna Hoffman, and I'm also a mom of 3 from Ann Arbor.
Together we co-founded Ann Arbor Reasonable Return. It's a nonpartisan group originally devoted to a risk-balanced return to in-person learning, and now focused on returning transparency and good governance to our local schools so that children impacted by the pandemic school closures can receive the education and services they desperately need. We come to you today because our community is in crisis and needs your leadership.
Since the start of the school year, before and after school childcare in Ann Arbor has been cut, busing routes have been eliminated. This has resulted in children as young as 5 years old being asked to walk 1.5 miles to school. And on a few occasions, even school itself has had to be canceled, once with just an hour's notice, because of the staffing issues that we're seeing in the state.
The closings and the program cuts are confusing and frustrating to everyone, from the public school families to many of our local elected officials, because financial relief to our district has been fairly generous, and we had started the pandemic with a $1 billion facilities bond. According to EdWeek's analysis of pandemic funding, Ann Arbor Public Schools has received more than $28 million in COVID relief funding. However, at the September 22nd Board of Education meeting, we were saddened to learn from the trustees that much of the money we had thought would go to addressing catching kids up who fell behind academically and socially during the pandemic with new initiatives would instead go to reimburse the districts for purchases it had already made, including more than $12 million in computers and software programs already purchased. Simply put, we fear the funding is not making it down to the students and families that need basic services like school and the consistency and stability of 5 full days of school as our superintendent promised during the summer enrollment period.
To be very clear, we are not asking for any funding cuts. No one wants less funding at this time of crisis. But the lack of oversight on how funds are spent is causing issues on our local level. Tomorrow, our district will approve another $114,000 in funding for software out of the ESSER funding. While we are struggling to simply keep the doors of the schools open, and many times parents are waking up to emails informing them that their children will not have in-person learning for the day.
The challenges facing school districts this year are well known, especially to the people in this room. But as Michigan Association of School Board Facilitator Mary Kerwin said at a recent Ann Arbor Public Schools meeting, if Ann Arbor can't do it, nobody can. We agree. A well-resourced district like AAPS should be a leader in delivering an excellent public education and now much-needed support services for students and families. Instead, the before and after school childcare parents relied on has been largely replaced with expensive enrichment classes, none of which are reliably 5 days per week. Many children among those lucky enough to still have busing are consistently arriving up to an hour late for school because of problems with the bus routes. 2 weeks ago, it was announced that the entire district would be closed on November 1st due to staff absences. The only thing we have an abundance of are these things. We have more Chromebooks in our district than students.
So we're here today to ask for your help. If Michigan's fourth largest school district cannot provide basic services such as childcare, busing, or 5 full days of in-person learning, despite all the resources that we have, who can?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Connie Robinson.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. When concerned parents and grandparents started showing up at school board meetings to object to CRT, they were told CRT is not being taught in schools. Superintendents, principals, and school board members were all in lockstep, same talking point, critical race theory. It's a complex legal theory that most people won't encounter until college or graduate school. This is a very clever trick used by a lot of administrators. As you know, there are 2 things that consist of education. There's curriculum, which is what the students are learning, and there is pedagogy, which is how they are taught. So you can officially tell parents that you're not teaching CRT, that is nowhere to be found in the curriculum, no CRT after 101 after math class. But when the classroom door shuts, a teacher, if they desire, can teach through the lens of race essentialism, thus having the ability to infuse it into every single course in every single classroom. And the other little trick that's being used is substituting CRT with different names, such as DEI, IBT, SEL, or CASEL. Although the nuances of all 4 are different, they are all under the CRT umbrella, and many schools have embraced all 4. And this includes the Heartland schools, mini schools. I would like to read, excuse me, I've kind of lost my place here. Okay, I would like to read from the CASEL website. There is still much to learn about how SEL can advance equity and excellence. CASEL continues deepening what is known about the implementation, influences, and impacts of transformative SEL. The concept of transformative SEL is a means to better articulate the potential of SEL to mitigate the educational, social, and economic inequities that derive from the interrelated legacies of radicalized cultural oppression in the United States. Sounds like CRT to me. Quote again, in their work on the role of U.S. teachers in U.S. education, Mira and Morrill in 2011 argued that education aimed at promoting personally responsible citizenship and its attendant individualism, consumerism, and passivity accords with a dominant neoliberal democracy. However, a critical democracy requires education to have collectivism, productive interactionism, and authentic engagement as its goals. Transformative citizenship is the most closely aligned with critical democracy as it refers to actions taken to advance policies or social changes that are consistent with human rights, social justice, and equity. Such efforts might be consistent with or violate existing local, state, and national laws, unquote. advocacy for breaking laws right there on the website. This is what's being taught. This garbage is disguised as caring for the social and emotional needs of
Thank
kids.
you, ma'am.
I'm almost finished. Can I please finish? Collectivism and equity, equal outcome, not equal opportunity, are Marxist concepts that don't have any place in schools. This is an educational board,
Ma'am,
not a
I'm sorry,
medical board.
we have a lot of people that want to talk
Okay.
today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we will now be moving to our virtual public participation. Again, 3 minutes. When you're admitted into the room one by one, you will be asked to state your name and the city you're from, and I will run a timer for 3 minutes. As you're listening to this, please be aware that when you are unmuted to provide public comment, we would like you to also mute the feed of the meeting so that we don't get feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mike, can you admit the first caller? Is the caller there?
Yes.
If you please state your name and where you're from and provide your feedback, I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Billy Schultz. My 2 girls attend in the Southgate School District, first grade and a freshman in high school. We do not want vaccine clinics or vaccine mandates in our schools. Medical decisions need to be left to the parents and legal guardians of the minor child. The school boards and the government do not have the right to make these medical decisions for our youth. If these mobile clinics come to my children's schools, I will end up pulling my children out of public schools and homeschooling them. Unmask our kids. Sending our kids with a mask or with or without a mask needs to be up to the parents or the legal guardian of the minor child. We need to stop unnecessary quarantines and testing on these healthy children. 99% of the quarantined children do not become positive. The courts are finding these quarantines unlawful. There has been 15 cases that have been won so far in the court system here in Michigan. CRT needs to be removed from all schools in Michigan. Parents are not domestic terrorists. We are parents who care about our children and the education and well-being. Legislation 380.10, Rights of Parents and Legal Guardians and Duties of Public School, Section 10. It is a natural fundamental right of the parents and legal guardians to determine and direct the care, teaching, and education of their children. The public school of this state serve the needs of the peoples by cooperating with the people's parents and legal guardians to develop the people's international capabilities and vocal skills in a safe and positive environment. 380.1137, Powers of Parent and Legal Guardians and Policies of Guidelines, Section 1137, Number 1. The recognition of the rights of parents and legal guardians, the board of a school district, public school, academy, university school, or independent school district shall ensure the parent or legal guardian responsible for the care and custody of the pupils enrolled in the school district, public school, academy, university school, and intermediate school district may do all the following. A, review the curriculum, textbooks, and teaching materials of the school in which the pupil is enrolled at a responsible time and place in a reasonable manner. B, be present and reasonable degree at a reasonable times and subject to reasonable restrictions, controls, and limits to observe structural activities in the class or course in which the pupils enrolled and present. As used in this
Ma'am. Ma'am, your time has concluded. Thank you for offering comment. Next caller, please.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, please state your name, where you're from, and I will be keeping a 3-minute timer for your comments. Thanks for calling.
Sure, thank you.
Name and where you're from, please.
Katie Beth Davis, Monroe, Michigan.
Okay, thank you. Please begin.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Katie Beth Davis. I live in Monroe, Michigan. My children are enrolled in Monroe Public Schools. My son specifically is enrolled in Custer Elementary School. As a delegate for this region, a member of the NAACP, a member of the Anishinaabe Caucus, and parent and person of color, I am calling for the state school board to issue guidance to the administration at Monroe Public Schools and ask for immediate action to rename the Custer campus Custer 1 and Custer 2 elementary schools. I have been in contact with the school board and the superintendent and was told that there would have been a subcommittee to be made to address these issues. It has been quite a few months and still I have heard nothing. The following reasons are the reasons why I believe that Custer Elementary should be renamed. George Custer amassed 726 demerits during his attendance at West Point Military Academy, and he graduated at 1861 at the bottom of his class. Custer was court-martialed twice in his military career. He was demoted from the rank of general and died as a lieutenant colonel. Custer campus, Custer 1 and Custer 2 elementary schools are resting on Potawatomi lands. Custer violated treaties forged in sacred trust between the U.S. government and indigenous tribes. He led a ruthless attack on a Cheyenne village, killing several women and children. The Detroit Board of Education voted to and changed the name of George Custer Elementary School to Thurgood Marshall Elementary School in 1993. In 2011, Custer High School was renamed the Milwaukee Campus for Trades, Technology, and Media with a focus on vocational and technology programs. General Custer and his history completely disregarded several of Monroe Public Schools' core values. I have emailed the entire board a resolution that was passed by the National Congress of American Indians to end the worship of Custer memorials. But despite him being a celebrated Civil War hero, he undermined the freedoms gained for African Americans after the war by campaigning with Andrew Johnson against the 14th Amendment, which would give former slaves national citizenship. Custer expressed contempt for the Ku Klux Klan and contempt for having to enforce their suppression through the Ku Klux Klan Act during his deployment in Kentucky from 1871 to 73. Mental health professionals and decades of research confirm that racist policies, symbols, and behaviors are linked with lower well-being, educational barriers, physical health problems, employment problems, etc. The APA...
Your time is up, ma'am. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Next caller, please.
Washington Campus for Trade, Technology, and Media with a focus on vocational and
if you could please mute the meeting, that would be helpful.
General Custer in his history completely disregarded several of them.
Thank you. If the next caller could please give their name and where they're from, I'll keep a 3-minute timer, and you can go ahead and provide your comments.
Okay, I assume that's me?
Yes, it's you.
Okay, my name is Cole Bean. I'm also from Monroe, Michigan. And is there anything else you need?
Nope, go ahead. Thank you.
So I just briefly like to touch on a few topics. The first one being masks and vaccinations. I believe that vaccines have always been required by schools and other organizations for admittance. Masks are a temporary solution to hopefully a temporary problem. We require people to wear clothes in school. We require half the population to wear shirts just because, that's what society deems appropriate. Masks are there for people's safety. I heard a lot of talk about protecting the students and not a lot about protecting the teachers and the staff who work in schools today when it came to COVID numbers and who's getting affected. So I would like to say I'm in favor of masks and vaccinations. I'd also like to briefly touch on CRT and inclusive curriculum in classrooms. Teaching children history should never be villainized. History includes very damning and very uncomfortable topics of oppression and racism and transphobia, and schools have long left our stories out of the classroom, which has led to misinformation and our erasure. And by erasing this history from our classrooms, we'll be doomed to repeat these atrocities over and over. I feel like including BIPOC and LGBTQ plus accomplishments in our classrooms, we give our youth the hope for the future, and they can see themselves in these role models. I'd also like to say that I would like the school board to come out against Native mascots in schools and schools named after colonizers such as Custer or Columbus or things like this, because this has a negative effect on our population, both our students and people. Native people exist today. They're real people. They have a real culture, and using antiquated or stereotypical mascots or glorifying, people who committed genocide in schools is just how can any of us say that that is positive? So those are the three things I wanted to touch on today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, please. Caller, if you could please state your name and where you're from, and I will keep a 3-minute timer. Please begin. Next caller, please. Can you hear me? If you're on the line, you're the next caller.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Please state your name, where you're from.
Okay, great.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Christy Murray. I'm from Midland, Michigan. And today I would like to read part of a letter that I wrote on October 27th, 2021 to Pamela Hornberger, the committee chair for career and education in our state. This is in hope to get legislative action to support SB 600 through 603. I am a longtime resident of Midland, Michigan, and a concerned mother of 2 young boys. Parents are desperate for help against blanket COVID policies that are difficult to fight back against. Currently, my son is forced to wear a mask 8 hours a day in school, and it has a negative impact on him. Parents in our district have begged our board for the right to choose what is best for their children based on their individual needs. After I spoke Monday to our school board stating that I know what's best for my child, our superintendent emailed a concerned parent and quoted local parentis as educators have the right to act as parents when controlling students. Concomitantly, they have the duty to act like a parent when protecting students from foreseeable harm. School officials not only act as parents, but they have the responsibilities that parents do not have, end quote. Yes. This is extremely concerning to me as a parent. I believe the super is abusing the law to override my parental authority. These are my children, and I am entrusting him to provide a safe environment, but not expect him to override my parental rights. I have a bachelor's in education from CMU and a master's in product stewardship from the School of Public Health at IUPUI. I have worked in the health and safety field for close to 15 years, and I have knowledge in areas such as child development, safety, industrial hygiene, personal protective equipment, but the most important credential I will ever hold is mother. I am far more suited to decide what is best for my children than our local school board, especially when it comes to medical decisions, and masking our kids is a medical decision. Now to speak and address our state school board. You need to be aware that my local school board has been bombarded with concerned parents, and our superintendent has continuously ignored them. There are parents asking for medical exemptions or religious exemptions that have fallen on deaf ears. Our superintendent made the unilateral decision to mask K through 6 students 1 week into the start of the school year after promising parents the right to choose. Parents have shared scientific evidence and their personal anecdotal evidence of the negative effects their children have suffered to no avail. We have a board in the state who like to make claims of the importance of diversity and inclusion, but these mandates have no place to allow for inclusion. Friends of mine who have IEPs for their children due to various issues such as sensory, ADD, ODD, hearing impairment, and other special needs, all which have made solid arguments that masking disrupts their child's ability to learn effectively, do not seem to matter. No exceptions. Besides the children with a
Ma'am?
obvious special needs.
Ma'am, your time
Yes?
is up.
Okay, well, I didn't get to finish, but thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you take this into consideration.
And thank you for calling in. Next caller, please. If you could please state your name, where you're from, and provide your comments, I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brittany Senecal, and I am from Jackson, Michigan. I started a group for concerned parents and residents in Jackson County. We advocate for COVID safety and transparent reporting. Currently in Jackson County, we are drowning. Our hospital's ICU is almost at capacity. According to the CDC, our weekly test positivity rate is 21%, and we are at 606 cases per 100,000 residents. We currently have 1 new and 26 ongoing COVID outbreaks. These are not 2 to 3 cases. We're seeing numbers like 12, 27, 48 related cases. Only one of our districts in Jackson County is requiring masks, and our districts have done away with quarantining. This has significantly increased COVID spread in our schools and our community. Today, I counted approximately 175 COVID positive staff and students throughout our county. We desperately need masks and required quarantines. While we are thankful for vaccines, less than 30% of children ages 12 to 15 are fully vaccinated in Jackson County. So vaccines simply existing won't help our situation. We have to use them. I support vaccine mandates. I support mandated masks in schools, and I support mandatory quarantines. Just to touch on some of the earlier points made, children dying in vehicle crashes is in fact higher than COVID deaths, but we do everything we can to protect children while they are in those vehicles. We use seatbelts, we have airbags, and we obey traffic laws. COVID precautions should be treated the same. We should be doing everything we can to protect students and staff from COVID. While children are less likely to die from COVID, over 700 American children have died from COVID. American children are losing out on in-person education due to preventable illness, and we're also, kids are experiencing traumatic, preventable loss of life of their loved ones due to COVID. The MDHHS, the CDC, and the American Academy of Pediatrics all agree that universal masking in schools is necessary, and it is time to listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Children dying in vehicle crashes is in fact
Caller, if you could please mute the feed to the meeting. Thank you.
Yes, I did.
Can you please state your name, where you're from, and I will keep a 3-minute timer for public comment. Thanks for calling.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Tuxell, and I am from Rochester Hills. Today, the United States received a warning from the World Health Organization to look to the rising COVID surge in Europe and to not wait to fully adopt the measures we need to curb spread. They are currently surging, and there is grave concern of a 4th wave there. Cases have surged 50%, and hospitalizations have doubled over the last 4 weeks. Anti-maskers continuously like to reference the UK for not requiring masks in schools. However, it is now being fully recognized by the UK that COVID spreads in their schools is indeed a main driver for their surge in cases, and that widespread winter lockdowns are now becoming a very real probability. They will not hesitate, though, to institute not only masks in schools again, but also masking for all indoor spaces. Scotland and Wales already require the public to be masked indoors. Do we want to find ourselves in that dire of a situation this winter, as we are headed that way as it is? Or do we want to keep our kids in school and learning by ensuring that every Michigan child is masked up in school, that a clear pro-vaccination stance is communicated, and that we are fully utilizing our testing resources? Also, many families are not being notified by their schools of exposures in a timely manner. There have been several reports of parents not being informed that their child was a close contact until up to a week has already gone by. This greatly impacts the ability to curb spread. And far too often, school districts are also not informing parents of a school outbreak at all. This is not acceptable, as we parents need this information in order to empower our decision making. If I am informed of an outbreak at my child's school, I can make safer choices, such as avoiding seeing grandma for a bit, pulling back on activities, and in an abundance of caution, I can test my child regularly at home as an additional metric for early detection. All of this allows us to take an active role in preventing both spread in schools and in the community at large. And as Dr. Bagdasarian detailed earlier, early testing can stop a school outbreak from even occurring in the first place. The fully vaccinated rate in Michigan for 12 to 15-year-olds is currently only 38%. This is nowhere near high enough for vaccination alone to curb spread. And in many regions, the vaccine rate is even lower. In Macomb County, which also does not have a mask mandate for schools, it drops to 36%. When you compare COVID outbreak data between a county such as Macomb to that of a mask county such as Oakland, the difference is clear. Masks do work to reduce spread in schools, and not only do they work very well, helping to keep the schools open, staffed, and the kids learning. Is that not what our common goal is? To keep kids healthy and to keep them in school and learning? We therefore must take a clear stand that masks should be required in every school district, that vaccination must be encouraged fully, and that testing must be utilized to its fullest capacity, and that we must keep these measures until such time as the data says we can take a step back.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
COVID, over 700 American children have died from.
Hello?
Hi, if you can please state your name. Can you please mute the meeting in the background? Thank you. If you'll please state your name, where you're from, and I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thanks for calling.
Okay, you want me to state now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Hezekiah. I'm from Dyer.
Please provide your comments.
Okay. Peace be with you all. I appreciate you all for taking my comment today. Thank you. I am concerned for our children and about the violence that has been occurring, such as mass shootings and crimes occurring in our schools throughout our country. I believe the root cause of a lot of this violence is because the topic of God has been stamped out of our schools. When children have in their mind that they are made in the marvelous image of God, that God sees all things, and that God shall judge each person at some point in time according to their deeds, it can help to brittle evil actions in our children. However, when our children are taught not to discuss the things of God and are taught that they come from monkeys, how can we expect them not to act like wild monkeys? While one of the founding principles of our nation is that government would not implement an established religion, not allowing discussions on the things of God is establishing a religion. It is establishing a religion of anti-God, which is not right and unconstitutional. I'm asking for the opportunity to hold some classes with our kids where I could listen to our children, hear their thoughts and beliefs as to whether they believe in God or not, and share with them a few things I believe and hold to be true, and then allow the children to engage in discussions and healthy debates with me as well as with each other in an effort to help establish truth with our children, help with emotional issues they may be facing, as well as help curb the growing violence in our schools and in society. I am willing to schedule to meet with you if you are open to discussing these things together. Thank you all for giving me the floor today, and have a great day.
Thank you. Next caller, please. Hello, if you can please state your name, where you're from, and provide your comments. I'll be keeping a 3-minute timer. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, thank you. My name is Brandy Murphy, and I'm calling from Jackson County. I am a teacher here and a mother of 3 school-age children, and I'd like to bring attention to the teacher shortage and its correlation to the pandemic. Teaching shortage is a result of things like adequate salary and the reform, which were mentioned earlier. However, the complexity in which this is true was discussed. The goal this year is to keep schools open and students in class. However, that isn't happening because of this pandemic and lack of listening to our health professionals. My salary is not that of a doctor who is qualified to care for sick students, yet administration is requiring I keep sick students in my classroom because lack of attendance leads to lack of state funding. Our district refuses to require masks or contact quarantine and has even allowed those with symptoms to attend after exposure, as long as parents aren't calling and stating they have a positive test. When positive cases are reported, I'm not being notified personally, but I'm finding out on our district dashboard when everyone else does. Lack of information, communication, and transparency is far too stressful to make our wages worth continuing teaching. I feel as if reported numbers are being skewed, and those of us who wish to protect ourselves and our families and our students aren't being told to us, so that lack of knowledge is what actually keeps us in our classrooms. Because of the amount of sick children in attendance and lack of information of safety precautions, I'm currently home with a sick child, which means I'm not teaching and my entire classroom had to be shut down. And that is the second time I've had to cancel class this year. If we had sent home the sick students when they developed symptoms and my administration had supported me, my child wouldn't currently be sick and I wouldn't have been sick last month, and I wouldn't have lost $500 in pay because of missing working hours while I or one of my children were sick in the last 2 months. When I'm able to teach, the quality of education for my students is lacking because I'm spending more time asking my maskless, coughing, sneezing students to wash their hands than I am able to spend educating. I can't focus on my own education as a college graduate student because I'm handling the backlash of parents who are upset that I've canceled class. But there's a teacher shortage, which causes a subbing shortage, and all of this could be prevented if we just sent home sick children, required close contact quarantine, and implemented universal masking. Allowing families to choose means that they're being allowed to choose whether their child causes severe illness in other children. My teenagers are suffering severe bullying for wearing their masks at school, and they're telling me horror stories about their friends being bullied who also wear masks, and teachers who are too mentally exhausted to prevent or do anything about this bullying. This is a nightmare that has been politicized in schools, and no one's willing to talk about it. Protective measures don't work if we leave them up to each family. And I know a total of 5 educators just in this county that are leaving or have left their classrooms and careers because of exactly what I'm speaking about today. An increase in salary will not be enough to change the teacher shortage. Properly supported teachers who feel safe and can in turn make children feel safe, rather than teach in such a stressed out way that children are being barked at while sitting at desks.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Next caller, please. Hello.
Means that they're being allowed to choose whether their child.
If you can please mute the meeting in the background, thank you. If you can also state your name, where you're from, and I will keep a 3-minute timer and go ahead and provide your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Renita Bonadies. I'm from Midland, Michigan. I wanted to address an issue as I've begun to research with the school boards, that I am finding that the Board of Education at the state level has abdicated their responsibilities and I believe their authority by making the school districts in the state autonomous. What that has done has allowed for an organization, the Michigan Association of School Boards, which is a nonprofit organization with no legal entity and nobody elected by we the people of the state of Michigan, to be given power to influence our school boards. They receive, as a 501c3, almost $2.5 million in dues paid to them by school boards throughout the state. They also receive conference and seminar funds of about $700,000 a year. What this has done is given the people, the parents, the community taxpayers, no real recourse to deal with local school boards, except when we're told to vote them out or to do a recall. But we cannot go to any particular entity because at the state level, it appears that there's no desire to do anything because they're autonomous and they can't do anything. Our local school board has not been willing to meet with parents. They give us time to speak every month. I've been at 4 monthly meetings now. We give them our input and there's no response, and we come back the next month and we do it again. And then we're also told for the Open Meetings Act that they don't have to let us attend any of their subcommittee meetings because those are going to be no decisions made at them. So therefore, they don't have to have any public people there. They can do everything behind closed doors, and then at the school board meeting, they simply appear, they tell us we've had this discussion, these are the motion on the table, and we're not able to really hear any of the discussion that went on behind the decision. And yet they continue month after month to tell us how open and transparent they are being and how they have a desire to interact with us, but they really can't. And we do not agree that that's the case. They are making a choice, and they're willfully neglecting the input of the parents and the community members by sitting there and telling us that we don't have to talk to you because the Open Meeting Act only gives you a certain amount of time, and then they claim they will respond but do not. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Next caller, please. Hello, caller. If you could state your name, where you're from, and provide your comments, I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thank you.
Sheila from Macomb County. I'm just going to hit on some things that I saw today, both looking online and listening. Considering the majority of the board is of a certain, well, actually it's both sides. So, you know, depending on when the majority board happens on this education board, that's when we decide to have things one way or the other. And because this board, we believe is a more democratic board, you know, things are being decided in that political sense. We got to stop it. We just got to stop it, you guys. I mean, seriously, this should be about the kids. It shouldn't be about politics. So that's one point. The other point is, you know, I saw a couple people eating lunch there today, and apparently COVID must take a break when the virus must take a break when you're eating lunch, since, you know, you don't have masks on and stuff. And then even after you ate lunch, while walking around, you didn't have a mask on. So must take a break only during lunch hours and not you know, fill the room at all. It's utterly ridiculous what we're seeing here. And Marilyn, just to let you know, you gave longer to the two women that spoke than you did to the other person that came second. So just an FYI, want to go back and look at that. Thirdly, I think we need to change the millages and stop giving money to the schools as property owners, because I don't agree with anything the school board is doing right now. So I think we need to start changing the millages. I think the power is in the people, and we can start doing it that way. Just an FYI, Wayne, Macomb, and Oakland counties have similar numbers, yet Macomb has no mask mandate. And out of all of them, they're the lowest numbers. So your masks don't work. They don't keep you safe. They don't change anything. If they did, the numbers would be so much lower. And the same thing with the vaccine. The vaccine is not working. A lot of people are getting COVID. The only thing that works is early treatment. Keep that in the forefront. And lastly, you know, you want to change the name of a school because this history person had this and that, and you're offended by it. Okay, history doesn't care about your feelings. Why don't we just stop naming things? And that way nobody in the history of the world will ever be offended, ever, in any point in history. It's utter nonsense. I'm homeschooling my child. The people in the state of Michigan, if you don't like the way the public school is running, get them out of there. I pulled mine. You need to get them out of there. Homeschool, send them to private schools, whatever. All it is government indoctrination. Get them out. So I'm sick and tired of coming on here and dealing with the same crap. All this is a political game that you guys are playing. It's about the kids. Why don't we take it back to being about the kids instead of making this a political game where you guys are wearing masks
Thank you.
Those
Time
other
is
people
up.
aren't.
Thank you. Time is up.
Ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
Next caller, please. Hello, caller. If you could state your name, where you're from, and provide your comments, I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thank you for calling. Caller?
Hello?
Hi, please state your name, where you're from, and I will keep a 3-minute timer. You can provide your comments. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. My name's Lisa Carey Harrow. I'm calling from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Please continue.
I'm calling to thank you. I'm calling to thank our state school board for all the work, for volunteering, and for working towards a better future for all Michigan kids. I would also like to thank the Ann Arbor Public School Board of Education for continuing to prioritize the safety and well-being of all families in our district during this ongoing global pandemic, for keeping a mask mandate and strong quarantine protocols in place. I want to thank the Ann Arbor School Board for offering remote options to be inclusive of both students and teachers with additional health concerns. I want to thank the Ann Arbor School Board for listening to the community, teachers, student leaders, local social justice advocacy organizations, and for supporting our state school board leaders. Our Ann Arbor Board of Education is majority BIPOC, all elected with overwhelming support, especially our two newly elected BIPOC trustees, Dupree and Carrie Harrell. Please lend them your support, and together we can defend public education and build a better, more equitable, inclusive future for all Michigan kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next caller, please. Hello, caller. If you can state your name, where you're from, and provide your comments, I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thank you for calling.
Hello, yes. My name is April Wiebe. I'm calling from Gibraltar. I have 2 students enrolled in the Gibraltar School District. I was just calling because I'd like to advocate on the mask mandates that are going on and point out that we need to work on installing air purification systems.
Can you please,
in our schools.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you please mute our meeting in the background?
Yes, can you hear me better?
Yes, thank you. Please continue. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. We need to look into installing air purification systems in our schools to improve air exchanges, reducing the risk of breathing in small aerosol particles that are exhaled from someone who may be sick with COVID-19 or other viruses. There is no data on how masking is affecting our physical and mental health. We are wearing them for long periods of time, many days in a row. This is a legitimate health concern that I have. I'm having a hard time understanding why cloth and surgical masks are still being recommended when they offer little to no protection and preventing transmission of aerosolized viruses such as COVID-19. And how can we be sure that these masks are not increasing the rate of transmission and viruses without proper use of PPE? It's completely unrealistic a child to wear PPE properly.
Have I lost the caller? Have I lost connection?
The number's still up there.
Hello? Is the caller there?
Unmuted.
Okay, we've got a lot of background noise. It's very difficult to hear you. Could you please continue?
Yes. I am just wondering, how can we be sure that these masks are not increasing the rate of transmission of viruses without proper use of PPE? It's completely unrealistic to expect a child to wear PPE properly and expect teachers to be mask police when they should be educated.
Okay, I think the caller's off the line. Am I wrong about that? New caller, please. Is there a caller in the lobby? Please admit a caller from the lobby. Someone in the lobby? Please state your name, where you're from, and provide your comments. I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thank you for calling. I am unable to hear you. Hello?
I think those are all of the participants, although we had an issue with the last caller.
Hello?
I'm calling back. She calling back?
Yes, this is her calling back, Mike.
Okay.
Ms. Wiebe, are you there? Hello?
Hi, I believe I got dropped, my call.
Yep, let me give you another minute so you can finish your comments. Please begin.
I'm just wondering why our children are still required to wear a mask when it's not required in grocery stores, theaters, concerts, sporting events in Michigan, and how is it even different in a school setting? I'm just one of many parents that are upset over these mask mandates and possible vaccine mandates. We have a constitutional right to make our own decisions when it comes to our children and their health, period. And that's all I got. Hopefully I didn't get cut out in my first part because I worked really hard on making these comments.
We heard you in the beginning, and we appreciate your comments. Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Mike, does this conclude public participation virtually?
Yes, those are all the callers.
Thank you, callers.
The next item on the Committee of the Whole agenda is presentation by Michigan Future. We welcome Ms. Kristen McDonald-Rivet, Vice President of Michigan Future. She is here to provide an informational presentation, and board action is not required. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I want to start by saying thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you here. Let me pull up my mask a bit. It's taking me a minute to get used to it. I want to thank Dr. Pugh for her early conversations that got this on the radar of the State Board of Education. I feel a little bit like I'm coming home. I had the honor of actually working in this building. I was one of the early chiefs of staff for Mike Flanagan when he was the state superintendent, and recognized some faces like Marty Ackley, who's always here within the Department of Ed. So it's good to be home with you all today. So I wanted to actually switch up the order of the slides a bit and share with you some data that we've had. Michigan Future is an economic public policy think tank. We're about 30 years old, founded in part by Lou Glazer, who has been before this body on a couple of different occasions. And we do work thinking about how our public policy infrastructure can advance Michigan to be a high prosperity state. So I want to put in front of you a map that I think probably folks have seen before. I hope that you have. This is actually the ALICE map in Michigan, and these are data that come from the Michigan Association of United Ways. And what this shows is the percentage of families who really struggle to meet their basic needs. And when we talk about basic needs, what we mean here are things like food, housing, clothing, transportation, healthcare. It is a pervasive problem in Michigan, to the point that as you look, only 4 counties in Michigan have ALICE populations below 30%. 5 counties in Michigan have ALICE populations above 50%, which means over half of our households are really struggling to meet their basic needs. Here's what's important with these data. This is pre-pandemic. This was before the disruption that we've all experienced over the last 2 years. We know it feels like 17 years, but in the last 2 years of the pandemic, this is what in 2019, when all traditional measures of a booming economy would say that we are thriving, that Michigan was at its fullest from an economic perspective. But what we see beyond that is that most folks are really, really struggling. We know that what we're looking at is a 2-tier economy, and there are some structural issues in our analysis that we have found that are really keeping Michigan as one of the country's lowest prosperity states. And it begins with the jobs that are here in Michigan. But here we go. This is analysis of the wage data from the Department of Labor using the American Community Services survey. This actually shows that if you look at the jobs in Michigan, what the wage data will show is that 59% of jobs pay less than $47,000 a year. Now we use $47,000 as a marker that is what you really need to live a middle class lifestyle in Michigan for a family of 3. So only 21% of our jobs pay over $70,000 a year. And this is what is available in terms of jobs in Michigan. So we really have a structural problem in the we have too many low-wage jobs in Michigan. So we broke that down and started looking at occupations. Now, these are categories that come from the Department of Labor, and Mertz has these slides if folks want to see these data in more detail. But if you see the difference in the scatter chart, what you'll see is the jobs on the left side of the chart are showing the jobs that are paying in the orange and the yellow are the salaries. So jobs that are paying over $47,000 a year and jobs that are paying over $70,000 a year. But the blue dots represent jobs that require a 4-year bachelor's degree. So there's a very strong divide and connection between education level and salary, with a couple of exceptions. The thing that's also of note here, which pushes that back against a lot of assumptions that are made, is that the left side jobs are not, by and large, skilled trades jobs, and the right side of that are not STEM jobs. So often in public policy debate, when we're talking about preparing kids for jobs of the future, we start talking about getting kids on a STEM pathway that will lead them to high-wage jobs. We push back on this notion of the skilled trades, but actually the data doesn't show that. What is very obvious in the data is that the strongest pathway to the middle class and the strongest pathway to a high-wage job in Michigan is a 4-year degree. But I'm not here today to talk with you about the pluses or minuses of a 4-year degree. What I'm here to talk to you about is to look back at this chart. This actually represents not just 40% of the households in Michigan, but it represents 1 million children. So when Michigan Future started looking at the work that we have done over the last 30 years and thinking about what our analysis shows, it became really clear that we needed to make some really big pivots in public policy that are both structural and at scale, which is when I wanted to engage a conversation with the board today about how to think about those things. So our board is comprised of leaders from the business sector, the policy sector. We have a former Speaker of the House on our board from both sides of the aisle. We'll say that it's time for us to do some structurally large pieces, bipartisan pieces, to move forward an agenda to particularly impact the lives of those 1 million children. So we have 3 structural issues that are creating this dynamic. One is that we have too many low-paying jobs. So we have to actually have an economic plan that attracts high-wage jobs, more high-wage jobs into the state. But to do that, we have to correct this other structural problem is we have too few people with low education attainment that is to actually get to those higher paying jobs. And our talent concentrations are too low. So we know that employers follow talent concentrations. The days of using tax incentives and things to draw employers into a region and having talent follow are really over. Economic development now is creating places where people want to live and creating concentrations of very high talent that bring jobs to those regions. But when we think about the 1 million kids, we believe it's time for us to think about, from birth through college, of how we can impact and support the children that are growing up in those LS households. So from a structural standpoint, and it is not a foreign topic to this table, we know that we are dramatically underinvesting in children in low-income families. So economically fragile kids no longer have the resources they need to be able to grow into thriving, successful adults, and it begins from birth. We believe strongly that the first lever that we need to think about from a policy perspective is creating cash-based supports for families with children from economic in the ALICE population. That is beginning that we're beginning by calling for a large increase in the earned income tax credit. So you'll see proposals, and there's a lot of writing that Michigan Future has put out, and we're slowly building a group of folks that are calling for a large increase. The earned income tax credit begins first by providing cash-based supports for families. It's work-based. If you don't work, you don't get the credit. And we've got a 40-year history of the EITC actually creating opportunity to pull workers back into the workforce. But we know what families need, the million kids need, is actually more cash, not more programs. So we've been working, and I've been at this a really long time, and been a part of designing some really beautiful programs that create incremental change and don't impact what is making our state almost entirely red, dark red. We have no green counties anywhere in the state. It's too big of a problem for us to try to program our way out of. So the first thing we believe that is important is that we are providing struggling families with direct financial support, so that for things like basic needs. The second is around the orientation of our education system that we would like for you to think about. So if you think about that scatter chart, on the right side of the are jobs that really require what have long been erroneously called the soft skills. But we have a track in Michigan. Our education system tends to track our kids. So kids that are coming from non-affluent families are often tracked towards their first job out of school. And they are taught and they are trained in a narrowing system that is going to get them to their first job. But if you look at how affluent kids are generally structured in the education they receive, that there is a broad base of skills that they are taught and a lot of focus on what we call the 6 C's, which is communication, collaboration, critical thinking. I have to write them down because I always lose the number of them. Content, of course, creative innovation, confidence. These are the things that are the schools that are by and large filled with affluent kids teach on a regular basis, and they're the skill set that we hear from employers on the right side of that scatter chart that they need more of. So as you think about the structure of our education system, we ask that you think about the 6 C's, that every kid has a system that is encouraging all of those things rather than a very narrow set of skills, even if they're focused in the STEM area, that are going to get a child to their very first job. And then lastly, the third lever that we are looking at is closing the opportunity gap that begins at birth, that to provide support for both in-school and out-of-school services, including wraparound services, youth development, parent-child programs, college access, and a cash-based support above and beyond the foundation allowance that allows kids to be able to access really important things like before and after school care, Little League, Mommy and Me classes, the things that happen outside the school walls that we know are really important for kids to grow to be healthy, stable adults. So I talk all the time about my husband comes from a big Catholic family. He's one of 5 kids that came along in 6 years. His dad worked for GM. When he was growing up, he got to do baseball and Boy Scouts. Well, so many of our kids, the kids that are living in the Alice households, can no longer afford things like Little League. Sports are pay to play. You show up at school, you're asked to purchase a graphing calculator, transportation to and from school, after school care when the school day is over, classes of music classes for 3 and 4-year-olds, AP entrance exams, things that in more affluent families are a matter of course, where you sit down at the kitchen island and you start writing checks of all of the things that you need, that kids need at the start of the school year and throughout the school year. If you're a child in an Alice household, those things are out of reach. So you may have access to an AP class, but you can't take the exam because you can't afford the book that helps prep you for that exam, and you can't afford the exam fee in order to take it. If you're on your way to college, what we know about kids from lower income families is often it's not the tuition that's stopping them from going to college. It's the small things like the bus ticket to campus. It's all of the materials that have to be purchased in order to get a new comforter in your dorm room. These are the things that are putting barriers in the way of our kids, that are stopping them from going to that space of the 4-year degree that is actually going to be transformative for our economy. So in summary, and then I'll take questions, there are 3 fundamental principles that we ask you to think about in these 3 levels. One is the access to, as we think about public policy, think about it at scale. Think about all 1 million children. when we're looking at this of thousands of kids at a time, when we have 1 million kids who are right now struggling in this, we will not be able to shift our economy to change the trajectory of ALICE families. So all children, birth through 22. I know a lot of the conversation here today, what I heard from public comment, is around that K-12 space, incredibly important, but it has to be the full range of children's lives. Because this is linked to so many facets of life, we fundamentally believe that the choice belongs in the hands of parents and students around the allocation of funds. Some kids need help with the graphing calculator, and some kids want to play Little League. We believe that the state policy needs to support in a cash-based way funds to parents every year that help them pay for those things that come naturally as a part of a course of day-to-day life for more affluent families. And then lastly, our recommendations are above and beyond the per pupil allowance in the state aid. That is not what we're here to talk to you about today. But we are in a unique place in time where we can think differently and restructure how we're thinking about support for these families, rather than having the incremental programmatic approach to how we've been facing education and the life trajectory of the ALICE kids in Michigan. Thank you.
Board members, questions or comments? Questions or comments for or from? Tick-tock goes the clock. Usually, Ms. Rivet, if I stall a little bit, I get some takers. Thank you, Dr. Pugh, for volunteering. I appreciate that.
It wasn't hard. Thank you for coming, Ms. Rivet. And thank you for the presentation. I think when you and I talked, we really talked about this whole piece around workforce development and the conversation that we had earlier where Dr. Rice showed us some stats that were moving us in the right direction that match up to the need for what we're seeing. My point has always been, how do we get our children to the space where they're thinking about their future, but we're not losing sight of their education and making sure that we're preparing them for their best selves. And especially when we talk about certain populations and parents who are so fearful of what this programming has looked like in the past. And so I do appreciate the fact that you're looking at educational attainment, where we're also looking at putting children in a space where they can begin to look at what their post-education will look like. So thank you for coming and presenting.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would say one of the pieces that was surprising to me as we really started to dig into the data, and I've spent my life working in this space, was how it's every single county. And it is big numbers in every single county. It's not specific population. It's actually most of us in a lot of areas that are really struggling. It's also, if you look at in this chart, what we see here when we think about is that in that 21% space for high wage jobs, folks that are there are largely getting there, particularly if they do not have a degree, they're getting there by way of promotion. So it is possible, it's a very small percentage, that are moving into higher wage jobs without a 4-year degree. But again, it's those 6C skills. It's what gets you promoted is your ability to collaborate with other people and to communicate effectively and to be creative and innovative. So there's the space, when you think about education, we talk a lot about it, but usually when we're talking about education, we mean content only. And it's so much more than that. That's really going to be important as we cannot attract more high wage jobs into Michigan if we are not in our education system getting every student access to those 6 C's that builds the workforce that will attract employers. It's an economic case at its core, in addition to our ability to actually care for our kids in a way that all their needs are met.
Ms. Lipton, to you.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. A lot of us who have been in this space for a long time have seen this data. And so I do appreciate the chart regarding the Alice household information. I think that when the United Ways, I first saw that through some college access work that I do probably 1 or 2 years ago. So that has, I think, probably been very, very helpful, the work that the United Ways did in compiling that information. I do think that it's important for other groups such as yourself and other groups to look at that data. I do want to just encourage you to look at, or perhaps be a little bit more expansive when you look at the data. There is a lot of research that would suggest certainly what you're describing, that attainment of more education is certainly something that can result in higher wages over time. And that's certainly, I would encourage you to look at, or perhaps even working in conjunction with groups like the Michigan College Access Network, which has been working in this space for about a decade, and creating what we call a college-going culture in elementary, middle, and high schools around the state. I would encourage you to look at the work of an organization that I founded when I left the legislature, the Michigan Promise Zone Association, which not only provides the cash, if you will, to those economically disadvantaged students to get a 2-year degree, but also provides the supports that many first-generation and low-income students need in order to persist in college. Because after doing this work for about a decade, what the research tells us is that the giving of the cash to the student really is not helpful unless you couple that with really substantial mentoring and support services to surround that student in order to champion and propel them to continue to persist through college. And I can tell you that the type of challenges that students face in order to complete their higher education is far more than just the need for the scholarship. So I would just encourage you, if you haven't yet already, take a look at the work of the Michigan Promise Zone Association, the Michigan College Access Network. And I was just looking, I did a quick look at some of your new board members or your existing board members. And many of them should be familiar with that work. But the question that I would like to ask you is, have you looked at, or are you at all entertaining other, what I would call research-based anti-poverty measures that would work in conjunction with educational attainment? Because many organizations do believe and push that educational attainment is an anti-poverty measure, but not perhaps the only one, or perhaps even the most immediately enjoyable for the population that we're trying to reach. And there's a lot of research that things like increasing the minimum wage perhaps would be a robust anti-poverty measure that would have direct effect on the quality of life of children. You certainly mentioned the EITC, and I'm happy to hear that you've included that in your measures, but also things like the ability for collective bargaining and labor unions to collectively bargain an increase in wages for their workers. So have you or does your board contemplate those measures as well as part of your menu of options that will reduce childhood poverty? Or are you simply looking at educational attainment?
So thank you for that. There's simply no question that is particularly when we're talking about first generation and kids from low-income families, that wraparound support, that sort of thing that happens as they work through college towards college attainment is so well documented and so critically important. What I want to be clear here is what we're advocating are direct cash-based assistance for families, for ALICE families, particularly for their children. So when I talk about, and I think that's a bit at what you're getting at, this idea that we don't want to program our way out of this. So we believe that beginning from birth through college, this sort of birth through 21 continuum, there should be a consideration of direct cash-based assistance every year for kids in ALICE households until they get through college. We believe that needs to be directed and by parents and students, and how to do that in meeting these needs of the pieces that wrap around kids, which essentially is what an increased minimum wage and other things would do. We believe the earned income tax credit goes a long way in doing that and has a very long history of bipartisan support. Our urging is that you think about cash-based and that you think about fully scalable at levels that actually make meaningful differences in what we know kids need to be successful. And it is that really important place of the content preparation on the way to college, but it's also those really important things that matter, not just in terms of the incidentals, but the huge importance of youth development programs and other things that are really important as kids grow. But it really needs to happen from birth all the way through 21, and it needs to happen every year.
So I would just
please no, go ahead.
Sorry, just yes. So I would then assume that your organization was fully in support and perhaps even advocating for the direct cash payments that were in some of the federal stimulus dollars for low-income families.
Yeah,
I'm just making that assumption that. And do you have a dollar figure? I'm assuming that. Well, perhaps I shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming that this direct cash payment, insofar as it is to be targeted toward the most vulnerable of our students, would be in the form of an expansion of the EITC, and then perhaps something like an expansion of some of our social safety net programs that are being discussed at the federal level that would result in a direct cash transfer to economically disadvantaged families with children. Is that my assumption is correct, that those types of programs would be sort of on your A+ list?
They're certainly on our radar. We are a Michigan-based public policy economic think tank, right? So our space is really, there are a number of different mechanisms to make that happen. What we think is important, again, is that it's be cash-based and it's fully scalable to all 1 million kids in these households.
Ms. Lipton, anything more?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Other board members? Going once, twice, thrice? And gone. Thank you so much, Ms. Rivett.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item on the committee of the whole agenda is presentation on special education. This presentation on special education will provide updates and information regarding the guidance, flexibilities, supports, and services that have been provided by the Michigan Department of Education Office of Special Education and its grant-funded initiatives since the onset of COVID-19. This is an informational presentation and board action is not required. Presenters are Dr. Scott Kenigschneck, Deputy Superintendent of P20 System and Student Transitions, Ms. Terry Rink, Director of Special Education, Dr. Steve Goodman, Director of Michigan's Multi-Tiered System of Supports Technical Assistance Center, and Ms. Kanika Littleton, Director of Michigan Alliance for Families. There will be a PowerPoint presentation. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and thank you, Board, for allowing us to come before you to give you some updates from COVID and beyond regarding special education. So as Dr. Rice said, we are joined by Dr. Steve Goodman from the Michigan Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Technical Assistance Center as the Executive Director, Ms. Kanika Littleton as the Director of the Michigan Alliance for Families, certainly Terry and myself. So what we plan to do, Terry is going to walk you through some updates regarding guidance and technical assistance that the department has provided since COVID. I will then work into some of the flexibilities that we are currently offering. Dr. Rice gave me a great segue this morning, and we build upon a lot of the information he shared. And then Dr. Goodwin will talk about the supports that his agency has developed and designed and delivered to school districts and teachers. And Ms. Littleton will summarize the supports that her organization has provided to actually children and families. And so that's how we're going to begin our presentation today. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Terry to walk us through some of the guidance that we provided from the Department of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Kenigschneck. So the federal government did not create any waivers for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act during COVID or since. And so the normal activities that the state system has to conduct to ensure provision of FAPE for eligible children all were continuing on, even though we may have had to change the way in which we conducted our work. That work continued. So what I want to share with you now is some additional information we've provided to districts in response to the pandemic, but also in combination with other needs we had identified previously that we felt the pandemic was actually putting a bigger light on. So the list of documents that are on this slide are actually a series of documents we created. Our first one was the guidance on compliance with IDEA and the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education during the pandemic. Districts were struggling to figure out how they were supposed to do things when there were challenges that hadn't been presented before, so the guidance was issued to speak to them about the ways in which they could go about doing that. Some of the additional guidance had to do with how we define consent in terms of obtaining parents' permission to evaluate children. We also created one on determining a change of placement that was predominantly in relationship to discipline and removals of children. So we did another one after that on how do you respond and count those discipline removals. We did an additional one on conducting a manifestation determination review, which is a required component of discipline to ensure that a children is not being disciplined because of their disability. We introduced some concepts of recovery services in response to the need of trying to find a way to provide some additional support to kids that were not necessarily a part of an IEP, but that we thought would be beneficial, and how we could enhance some opportunities for their learning given the period of time that they had interruptions in service. We, in combination with the department, issued some additional guidance on returning to learn. That was important for the return for the fall of 2020. Supplementary aids and services were a component that we developed to help parents and districts understand if they were going to be talking about recovery services. That was the component of the IEP where that information could be put. Social maladjustment is a document we developed to clear up some confusion on eligibility determinations for children who were being considered for emotional impairment. We also did a lot of stakeholder engagement and developed some guidance collaboratively talking about how to provide FAPE to individuals who may be in county jails. And then as a way of creating greater transparency and understanding from the community regarding how state complaint investigations are conducted by our office, we put out a new guidance document to create some more details around that to improve the public's understanding. So in response to all of those guidance documents, we held a series of webinars. We hosted several of them for different groups at their request. Some of them we convened because we felt it was important to get with them. I won't go through all of those with you, but this is a month-by-month breakdown of the different groups that we convened with through webinars and open questions and answers to clarify the understanding of the various groups who are interested in understanding more about trying to implement IDEA during the pandemic. So there was the list for March through July. Maybe we'll go ahead to the next group. These are the groups we convened with through January of 2021. And since that time, we have continued engaging with districts, but not as a result necessarily of the pandemic, but just as additional clarification given some of the unique challenges that districts are dealing with since that time. We also created some technical assistance for specific reasons or specific groups. We regularly convene with new directors of ISDs, and we work with their monitors on training for how they conduct activities at the ISD level. We work with ISDs on understanding their federal determination in response to the determination of the state. Coordinated early intervening services and comprehensive coordinated early intervening services and writing response plans for coordinating early intervening services have to do with either voluntary or involuntary uses of 15% of federal IDEA funding for children who are not children with disabilities, but that may be at risk for other concerns. We've provided some clarification on corrective action plans as a result of noncompliance. We work with districts on helping them look at uncorrected noncompliance and bringing them into compliance. And then we do an 8-hour-long boot camp for helping districts, mostly teachers and service providers, on how to create appropriate individual education plans for kids with disabilities. We also have a series of training videos. Those are available on our Catamaran training website. I'm not going to go through a lot of those, but those are a lot of the additional details of information that are helpful to districts when they're working with specialized staff. So some are specific to data entry, some are specific to children moving from Part C to Part B, and then we have a series of those looking at consent around kids with transition because of the involvement of outside agencies. And again, we continue to provide more information on discipline protections and considering change of placements for discipline removals. And then we also have an information line. It's a toll-free number that we have available Monday through Friday in our office for the public to contact our office directly with questions. They can also send us an email, but this is the data that we collected between July 2020 and June of 2021 in terms of the types of questions that we were getting. I'm really proud that we have a 98% response rate within 24 hours for anyone who contacts our information desk. As you can see from the graph, there's a whole bunch of little things that kind of comprise that first category, but predominantly people were asking a lot of questions about determining the adequacy of programs and services in light of a child's need, helping to interpret some of our rules and how they understand that at the local level, determinations regarding the effective implementation of IEPs, and then a lot of questions about little kids between the ages of 3 and 5.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Terry. So what I'd like to do is spend a few minutes talking about some of the flexibilities that we've been able to provide as a department to the field over the last year and a half or so. And the first piece that I'd like to talk about are some waiver options. And so Dr. Rice, as the state superintendent, has the ability to grant waivers, and we have 3 in special ed that we have granted, one being around school social work. I'll talk a little bit more specifically about that in the next slide. Another regarding teachers of students with autism, and finally, a relatively new waiver regarding special ed programs where the teacher endorsement, well, currently it must match the program. We provided some flexibilities around that. So with regard to school social work, and I think Dr. Rice talked specifically about this morning, we have a waiver that is available for districts that allows them to fill a school social worker position as long as the person has a master's degree and is enrolled in a school social work program. So they have to have a master's of social work, enrolled in the program. They don't have to have it completed. And so you can see the numbers there. Last year from July 1 of 2020 to June 30 of 21, 9 waivers. And this year already, we have quadrupled that number to date if you look at October. So a popular waiver around school social work. Teachers, for students with autism spectrum disorder, we know there's a teacher shortage. We heard about that this morning. So this allows a district to fill an open position in an ASD classroom. If they prove that they've tried to hire an ASD certified teacher, they can fill that with a teacher who's endorsed in the cognitive impairment, emotional impairment, or specific learning disability. And you can see the numbers there as well. 14 of those waivers issued last year. We're at 9 as of October already. And you've heard about this before, I believe, at the board table. You know, the theory behind this is it's better to have a certificated teacher, special ed teacher, in the classroom rather than a very well-intentioned long-term substitute. And we talked about that around this board table, so this is kind of revisiting that and sharing some numbers with you. So relatively new is additional flexibility that kind of builds upon what I just shared with the autism flexibility. So a district can fill an open position in a CI program, cognitive impairment, EI program, specific learning disability, or the other two listed, even if their area of endorsement does not match the program. So that is a new waiver that we started issuing as of July 1 to try to provide those flexibilities, again, with the notion of it's better to have a certificated teacher in that classroom. We are now at 13 of those waivers as we get into this year. We also are trying to facilitate new pilot type programs or experimental programs. And so we have 3 of them that I'd like to highlight. The first is between Eastern Michigan University and Washtenaw, and this is really targeted at, again, Dr. Rice set the table perfectly this morning, growing your own in terms of paraprofessionals. So this takes existing exceptional paraprofessionals within the Washtenaw ISD and in a sense fast tracks them to a special ed teaching degree. You can see at bullet 2, it waives the general ed student teaching requirement, but extends the special ed student teaching requirement. So when a paraprofessional graduates from Eastern, they do not have a general ed minor, so they cannot teach in general ed, but they do have that major or endorsement in specific learning disability. So that's one that is underway. It's going very, very well. Another pilot program is with Oakland University. These are master's level programs, so a person with a bachelor's degree could go back and earn a master's in specific learning disability or EI. And it's very similar in terms of the outcome. They earn that special education major that allows them to teach in either SLD or EI, but they don't earn that general ed minor, so they cannot teach in the general ed setting, which in many states, that's the way that it is. Michigan is very rare in requiring both of those experiences. And the final experimental or pilot program is with Central, similar in nature, but this is both undergraduate and graduate levels, and it's aimed specifically at the cognitive impairment program. Some of the uniqueness to this program is the courses are online. For our UP colleagues who were here this morning, it's really intentionally aimed at engaging folks in the Upper Peninsula. You can see some partners listed there, DPSCD, Gratiot Isabella, and Genesee ISD. Again, the graduates of this program will earn a special education endorsement in CI. More flexibilities. This is around the alternative route programs, and so we have a number of programs that have been created in the last couple of years. The top 2 are programs that started with enrollment just this fall. And these are a result of Senate Bill 657, which again, we discussed around this board table. We have 2 alternative route programs that enrolled students this fall. One was #Teach, and you can see the areas of endorsement that they're offering. And Michigan Teachers of Tomorrow also is offering an SLD endorsement. 2 programs that are going to begin winter enrollment. Again, Dr. Rice talked about the first one this morning. The On the Rise Academy will begin offering alt-route programs for special education in those 3 areas, as well as professional innovators. That one is pending, but you can see the areas too there that they are attempting to certify teachers in. Another, I don't know if it's a waiver or flexibility, but something that we're proud of is it's an incentive. So Michigan Department of Education set aside a portion of our IDA federal funds to incentivize teachers to earn additional areas of endorsement. And so we launched this in May, and we work with districts then who work with teachers who are currently teaching in their district to, if they're interested in going back and getting that additional endorsement, we will pay up to $800 per credit for 6 credits for 3 years. To be eligible, the districts must have a 60% or higher free and reduced lunch population, and the tuition reimbursement does not cover repeat courses. And so that is very new. We're excited. We have 8 people that are currently taking, 8 people and districts, 8 teachers and districts that are taking advantage of that, with more approvals to come. And then to wind my portion of the presentation up, again, Dr. Rice talked about this morning, and I wish our UP colleagues were here, but additional areas that we're looking at with regard to current flexibilities is this notion of reciprocity. The superintendents talked about it, Dr. Rice talked about it. We have out-of-state teaching candidates that want to come here and teach. In many of those states have what they call cross-categorical endorsements, where in Michigan we have very specific areas of study that need to be completed before being certified. So we are working with Leah Breen's team to try to provide additional flexibilities, not only for our border counties, but it would really benefit our border counties as teachers come in from out of state. In terms of the school psychologist, we're having conversations again with Dr. Chapman's team around possibly trying to provide flexibilities there. And the notion we're looking at is, can we mirror the flexibilities that we provide with social work? Can we have these school psychologists in a program and then hire them as they work towards completion? And from what I understand, that's the way it used to be a number of years ago. And so we're talking about additional areas as well to try to help support districts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Steve Goodman, again, the director of My EMTSS Technical Assistance Center. Dr. Goodman's going to talk about all of the services and supports that his grant-funded initiative has provided to districts and teachers.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure and honor to be sharing our work with you all. Thank you for that. We function as a technical assistance center for the Michigan Department of Education. And what we do is we provide professional development activities, and those activities are helping educators to develop effective skills in implementing programs. What are effective learning strategies? What are effective instructional supports? So we do that. We support students who are in classes for special education as well as general ed settings. We support all educators because, as you know or may know, the majority of students with disabilities are in majority of their time in special education or in general ed settings. So what we need to do is make sure that we've got effective settings for all students, and then we need to intensify supports for those students with disabilities. So just supporting in general ed settings is not enough. We need to provide effective strategies for, for our students. So with that, what I wanted to share is some of the events that have happened last year when things were, quite rough, and then overall since the pandemic. So what you see is the information that's on the right side would also include information that's on the left side. I just wanted to highlight some of the things that happened particularly last year along with the overall pandemic. So what we had to do during the time of the pandemic was to change the way that we reach out to educators. We had to be much more flexible. We had to make sure that we have shorter amount of time periods that we're working with them. We also needed to change some of the content because educators were not used to online or virtual learning or distance learning. We had to change ways of how we can support students better. So on the left side, what you'll see is just last year we had 217 events offered that represented, we had 3,025 participants from 48 districts. And then we also...
48% of the
48% of districts, yes, thank you. That percent means a lot. Yes. So 48% of the districts with 1,255 participants from 93% of ISDs. And then you can see since the pandemic on the right side. We also had some recent special events. So the Michigan Department of Education has been focusing on accelerated learning, and we provided a 5-webinar series during the summer of 2021 that was presented by national experts. There were 389 participants, which represent 11% of districts, and you can see 48% of ISDs. We also, this past summer, of August 2021, held a multi-tiered system support annual conference, and we had 760 registrants from 22 different states, certainly including Michigan, but also 3 countries. And so it's quite a big event for us. We also had a fall, so we're in these series right now for the fall, and there's 4 webinars that are presented by state and local implementers, and currently the numbers are higher right now. It's about 270 registers for that. I mentioned that we had to pivot to different ways that we're supporting educators. So we look at what we provide on the website, and you can see just in last year, we had 52,691 users, which is 247,709 page visits. We also have a YouTube channel, and just since the pandemic, we offered, added on 275 videos that could be on demand to help educators to really look at improving instruction and improving the supports for students. And you can see that has been added on with additional views from that. That allows us to do either in person or not in person, in real time, but also on demand. And we also offer a EduPath online courses, which are just courses to go through and provide more learning for educators. And just here's an example of the online video. We curate that because what we know is educators are overwhelmed with so much. So we make it really easy with playlists and downloadable material so that they can find things quickly. So I'm going to pass this on.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Goodman. And as I shared, we will hear from Ms. Kanika Littleton. She is the director at Michigan Alliance for Families.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kinishnik. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk to you about what Michigan Alliance for Families is doing for families across the state. We are the IDEA grant-funded initiative that works directly with parents of students who are receiving special education services or who may be eligible to receive those services. So we're servicing families that have children birth to 26. We are also in our 4th cycle of being the state's federally funded Parent Training and Information Center. So per IDEA, every state has to have a Parent Training and Information Center to work with families to help them understand special education, to understand their rights, to help their child develop and learn so that they can become meaningful participants in their child's education and ultimately lead to better outcomes. So I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we have done since this year and a half since the pandemic began. We are very fortunate that we were able to still service families. Even before the pandemic, we were already structured to work remotely, so the shift was fairly simple for our staff to be able to continue with that work. We were able to still offer our core services of information and resources, provide one-on-one mentoring to families, do advocacy referrals, and offer statewide learning opportunities. One of the additional services that we did add during the pandemic was a virtual parent support group. We just felt that the need for families to be able to express the mental anguish that came along with the pandemic was very important. We have a very comprehensive website, which includes a COVID-19 page. That COVID-19 webpage is constantly updated with new guidance from MBE, from the Federal Office of Special Education. There are resources on distance learning for children, how to become involved and engaged students, whether they are in a remote setting, a hybrid setting, or in-person educational environment. We also have additional resources on there because sometimes families call us and it's not about education, especially during the pandemic. They were looking for food resources. They were looking for access to the internet. So all of that is housed on that COVID-19 webpage. We also added an additional 5 regional parent mentors to our staff. So our regional parent mentors service all 83 counties in the state. We were able to expand our social media outreach with the support of good marketing, as well as expand our outreach to a virtual setting. So we're doing virtual conferences and things like that, as well as leveraging our existing partners, which include the other grant-funded initiatives, other state partners, as well as the parent training and information centers across the country. So up here on this graph, you will see a little bit of the numbers. These are the primary topics for our interactions over the last 2 fiscal years. You will see that there's an increase in questions or calls about evaluation and eligibility, as well as the IEP process, how to implement that process in a remote setting. Also, adult services also increased as well. During the very beginning of the pandemic, we worked quickly to add 6 COVID-19 videos that have to do with special education during COVID-19. And this was largely informed by a parent survey that we did initially when the schools closed down. And so what we received from parents was that they needed help just navigating special education. You know, how do our IEP still being implemented? Does FATE look the same? And of course, we know that it does. There were no waivers. So those videos are still housed on our webinar page. And here you'll see the number of views for the COVID-19 specific web pages on our website, over 16,000 views. The top 3 pages, of course, is that COVID-19 homepage, as well as some stuff about distance learning for children with IEPs, returning to school during the pandemic. And as I said, we have a large social media outreach. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, as well as a YouTube channel where we house over 60 archived webinars dealing with special education topics. We also do a monthly e-newsletter where we will, if there are new guidance documents that have come out or there's something new going on across the state, we will highlight that in our e-newsletter. As I mentioned before, we do statewide learning opportunities. Before the pandemic, those were done in person and on a regional basis. We have now switched to doing virtual statewide learning opportunities, so live webinars. We have a 4-week IEP class that we do, so we'll pull in the same cohort of parents to attend that class. These are the top 5 attended since over August 2020 to August 2021. And you'll see it has, most of them have to do with COVID-19. There were also other popular topics like communication with the schools. And so that's the top 5 right there. We do this in partnership, again, like I said, with some of our grant funding initiatives. We've partnered with MyMTSS, TAC, Student Advocacy Center, Developmental Disabilities Council, AltShift, and SIMS is another, Special Education Mediation Services is another grant-funded initiative that we partner with very frequently. This graph shows you the number of advocacy referrals over the last 2 fiscal years, and as you can see, they increased significantly during 2020, 2021. Those are the numbers by topic. In that other category, we saw that it was mostly about a lack of communication between schools and parents, as well as just that IEP implementation in remote settings. That's all I have for you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Littleton. Thank you to our other 3 presenters as well. Who would like to get us going in our special education presentation Q&A? Ms. Lipton, thank you so much for volunteering.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question regarding the portion of the process, the special education process, that would refer someone to advocacy referrals. It's my understanding, and from some experience I've had in this space, that there is a portion of the process that doesn't necessarily contemplate a combative role, but there may come a time in the process where the collaboration between what the parent wants or desires for the child and what the school district or special ed supervisor believes is needed may not necessarily mesh. And that my recollection of IDEA is that there is a process in place that would involve, first, I think perhaps a referral to mediation, which Ms. Littleton, you referenced in your presentation. And then you talked about referrals to advocates. Could you speak to what that referral process looks like in terms of, I assume there's, well, I guess I shouldn't assume anything. What does that referral process look like, not from only the standpoint of the person asking for the referral, but in terms of who you are referring them to?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Lipton, for that question. So Michigan Alliance for Families contracts with educational advocates across the state. They're also funded by MDEOs. And the process, we may have a parent call, and they have a particular situation. The parent mentor triages that situation and will talk to that parent to find out what's going on. A lot of times, it's not a situation where they need an advocate. It's just a situation where they need more information, and that parent mentor can provide that information and walk the parent through the process so that they can be able to participate in the IEP meeting, and really be a part of the team. We always, as Michigan Alliance for Families, we always promote that IEP facilitation and mediation process before sending to an advocate. We know that mediation and facilitation really works when it's utilized. So we are always promoting the Special Education Mediation Services grant-funded initiative to all of our families. There are situations where an advocate is needed to attend a meeting, though that criteria is outlined in our protocol. So it may be something like a manifestation determination review. It may be a suspension and expulsion. That is just a really more serious situation where a parent needs someone to come in and advocate for them. But again, promoting that collaborative process between the parent and the IEP team. So if that's the situation and the parent mentor determines that they need an advocate, they will write up a referral and they'll send it to that advocate to work with the parent. The parent will then work directly with the advocate to try to address the situation. Sometimes it's attending a meeting and just going through the options with the parent. Once that happens and the situation is either resolved or not resolved, the advocate will send that parent back to Michigan Alliance for Families for further mentoring. Because again, we're trying to educate parents. The more knowledgeable a parent is, the better they're going to be able to participate in their child's education. They're going to be able to collaborate better. Ultimately, that's going to lead to better outcomes for students.
Yes, thank you. But what I'm also curious to know is, you said you contract with educational advocates. So I understand the process. So what does that? Who are these private individuals with certain sort of training? What does that look like in terms of who are these people on that end?
So the advocates typically come from maybe a local ARC chapter. I don't know if you're familiar with the ARC, but it's an organization that assists individuals with disabilities in living their, being a part of the community. So these people are very knowledgeable about disabilities. They're very knowledgeable about special education. They are required to attend ongoing professional development with Michigan Alliance for Family staff. So it's always ongoing education. They receive training from the Special Education Mediation Services program on how to collaborate. So they're not people that come off the street and just say, I can advocate. They're receiving training. They also provide those services for free to families as part of Michigan Alliance for Families.
Are they receiving in-house training from MAF, or are they receiving and showing some proficiency from some other organization?
They receive in-house training from Michigan Alliance for Families, as well as their own organizations that are closely aligned with special education and servicing individuals with disabilities.
Such as?
Say it again.
Such as? For example.
Oh, the ARC, Michigan, is an example of an organization like that that is closely aligned with special education, helping individuals with disabilities. So that training that they receive comes from their organizations as well as Michigan Alliance for Families.
Okay. Are you any resources or referrals through the various community dispute resolution programs throughout the state?
Not for advocacy. Can you repeat that again?
Any referrals to any of the community dispute resolution programs throughout the state at the point at which someone contacts Michigan Alliance for Families asking for advocacy services?
Yes, as I mentioned, a lot of parents call and ask for an advocate, and that's the first thing that they ask for. We find that 9 times out of 10, an advocate is not what they need. They need more information. So we will always refer them to the Dispute Resolution Center first before any advocacy is ever mentioned. So the Dispute Resolution Center, that special education mediation services is part of the all the dispute resolution centers are different depending on what county it is, but they're all a part of that network, I guess.
Right. I'm just trying to understand from a on the ground level. So you might refer someone to the community dispute resolution centers. You might refer them to the ARC, or to perhaps even yet some other advocate that you've contracted with.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Any other board members? Dr. Pritchett.
Thank you. First of all, given the fact that there were no waivers, I want to commend you for all of the services that you have been able to provide to parents with children who have some high needs.
And Dr. Pritchett, you mean federal waivers? Federal waivers,
right, yes. No, I appreciate the waivers that have been given at the state level at this point. And specifically, and generally, you talked about the 3, Eastern Michigan, Oakland University, and the other university. So a parapro who's decided that they want to take the next step, technically that's a 3-year program. So is that full-time, or do you find that sometimes these parapros will keep their job at the local district and try to take night classes, online classes, et cetera? Just generally, I realize every situation's specific.
So that's specific to the Eastern Michigan University program.
Right.
Many of those paraprofessionals coming in already came with some undergraduate credits, so they may have as many as 60 in many cases. Their paraprofessional teaching experience continues as part of their education, so they're not having to pick between one or the other. They may have a class in the evening because that's when the class is offered, but their paraprofessional experience is part of their educational training.
Okay, all right, so there's that flexibility there, because all I can see is that you've got a highly qualified parapro who, in many instances, can have a one-on-one relationship with a student, and then to have them be pulled away from that would be counterproductive, at least for that student.
Washtenaw was interested in supporting local districts who were really interested in trying to keep their parapros and do that grow your own process. So part of it was preserving their ability to continue working in their capacity, but also providing them education so that they had other options for additional work, but within the districts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Other board members?
I just have a quick
Ms.
question.
Snyder, yep.
Under advocacy referrals, the last section just says other. There's quite a big portion of the total for each line, and I'm just curious, what would other be? A handful of different things, a couple of different things, and what example would you give for that?
The other is, we saw that it was typically comprised of just lack of IEP implementation, We saw a lot of districts telling parents that they could not provide virtual options to students with disabilities, that they would have to attend in person, or vice versa. They would need to come in person and not attend virtually. And so a lot of the students that we work with, they have health issues, they have other concerns that would just make that a dangerous situation for them. So much of it was just comprised of how do we implement an IEP in a remote setting, lack of using contingency learning plans, which we know was not required, but highly encouraged by the department to use, and districts just saying we don't do this. So most of it was that situation.
Thank you. Mr. McMillan?
Yeah, I guess I do. As some of you know, when I was in the legislature, I held, I think, one-of-a-kind hearing on the problems parents were having with the department regarding appeals, or not just the department, but the whole system. And I think there's been some work on that. But if my friend Marcy Lipset was here, would she say that the system is better, and what areas would she say need improvement on the appeal process? Transparency. I mean, I think I remember, parents just kind of going into a dark hole where nobody knows what's happening or what's going on or I mean,
it's a little bit of conjecture. We're trying to hypothesize about what somebody who's not in the room would think. Would you like to ask a direct question that they might be able to answer?
I'm just saying, is the system flawless? What are the areas that we need improvement on?
Good question. Thank you.
I know you remember, back in
2014 was when I held that.
We had a complete review of our dispute resolution system by an outside consulting firm who gave us some pretty pointed feedback on errors in our process at that time. We've made a significant number of those changes as recommended, and we've continued on that path. Just before the pandemic, we were having another assessment done of the system, both to note any improvements, but also to continue pushing us to improve the system. I'm really happy that when the second report came out, there were no areas where our accountability system was non-compliant. All of the feedback and recommendations were how to improve the outreach, inform parents more effectively, and be more accessible so parents had the information more readily available. I can't speak for Marcy. Marcy continues to file complaints, so we still know that she's involved actively in our work. But where Marcy used to have a lot of concerns about our process, I think our process has improved significantly regarding some of the concerns that were shared during the times that you're referencing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think putting more attention on the front end of the process improves outcomes. To Ms. Littleton's point, on the back end of the process, the more we do this early and collaboratively with parents, the better it's going to be in our relationship with them at the local level is what I'm talking about now. And the better off it's going to be for our children. And that's the spirit in which you asked the question.
Yeah, can I just one last follow-up, if I might?
Yeah,
one thing that really disturbed me, I'm not going to suggest that I'm an expert in this area at all, and there can be reasonable and unreasonable requests, and we're talking about children, and parents in very emotional situations. But one thing that really struck me, and I remember, is that it seemed like some districts were using kind of slap strategies where they will spend an inordinate amount of legal resources to just shut up parents, to say, fine, you want to go down this? Well, we're just going to completely overwhelm you with legal fees, and if you want to go bankrupt, go ahead and advocate for your kids, but we are not going to, we're going to win this thing whether you want to or not. Are those situations something that the state board or that the MDE would get involved with and hear from and try to get some kind of justice involved?
So procedurally, districts are allowed to do that, to go down that path. We certainly don't advocate for that. Back to Dr. Rice's comment, we obviously want that problem, an issue resolved at the lowest level preferably not in not in a court of law, with tremendous legal fees, Tom. But districts have the right to do that. We would never advocate for that.
Okay, but you wouldn't help those parents out.
So we don't play a role in due process hearings at the department. That's a procedure that's adjudicated through the administrative law judges under a different agency. We only know that they have been filed. We can see if they've been dismissed or withdrawn for any reason. And then if there are final decisions where corrective action is ordered, our office oversees the implementation of that corrective action, but we don't have a role in due process hearings.
But if I could, I think that the question really was about the breadth of the dispute resolution process, which begins and mostly ends far earlier.
Right.
And I think the point of the question is, are we doing a better job in that regard so we don't go down the line where parents feel aggrieved and have to avail themselves of a due process hearing? And I think that's really to where Ms. Littleton was speaking earlier about pouring time, energy, attention, focused resources early on dispute resolution so that we don't end up in a due process hearing. Is that really where you're reflecting? Because that's a place where I think if we continue to support parents substantially, and I think that there's an issue of consciousness raising among parents. Here are your rights. Here are what you can do to avail yourself of if you disagree with. And there are a whole host of opportunities before you end up in a due process hearing. And I think that's what all of us would recommend, that we would be additionally supporting those efforts so that parents don't feel like they're outgunned in some sort of a legal special education process. You want to, because I mean, again, I think that's where Ms. Littleton was going in her sharing. Is that right?
Absolutely. We work tirelessly to make sure that parents are informed and that they're collaborative. So we will give them knowledge of the whole dispute resolution procedure, but that starts with facilitated meetings. That starts with mediation or just having a conversation, seeing if you can work that out so that it doesn't get to the point of a state complaint or a due process complaint. To the point about the advocates, that's a situation where they may come in when we have a school district that is just bumping heads, that is just putting up a wall and saying, we don't want to mediate, we don't want to talk, this is how we do things, and you're just going to have to live with it as a parent. Those are the situations when we would bring an advocate in. Again, that is not the bulk of work that we do. The bulk of the work that we do is supporting the parents to become better advocates for their students, supporting young students with disabilities who are transitioning to adulthood to become better advocates for themselves, be more knowledgeable so that they can participate in their own education. So we pour a lot of our resources, time, and energy into providing those one-on-one parent mentors to help them get through the process before that situation occurs.
And just to that point, because I thought that was spot on in terms of not only process but need for process. The better those relationships are at the local school level, the better children are supported, because the relationships between parents and educators affect the children. There's an old expression, when elephants fight, the ground gets trampled. And when adults fight, often kids get caught underfoot. And that can be the case not simply in special education, but in general education as well. But the stakes feel higher in special education. So your work is so important, because what it does is it gives parents tools to feel efficacious in their work with educators, with schools, so that they're able to successfully advocate for children. And I just think that there is a huge value to the money spent on this end, the beginning of the process, pouring into parents, making them feel additionally capable of supporting their children, so that there's less on the back end, so that the issues get resolved on the front end. It's not a perfect system. We have work to do. There's no question. I think we've done work. I think it's a stronger system. I think we continue to have work to do. I think the more we pour into early, the better off we're going to be. More importantly, the better off the children are going to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Rice.
Thank you. Mr. McMillan, did you want to follow up on that?
Good.
No, you're good. Okay. Any others for the good of the group?
I think Ms. Lipton had a...
I beg your pardon. Ms. Lipton, waving from the gallery. Yes, ma'am.
Just a follow-up question to one of your data points. You mentioned that you've added 5 more parent mentors to your program. And my question is, or do you now consider yourself to be at, full capacity, or do you still feel that there are areas for growth in terms of bringing on more parent mentors? And if that is the case, what limitations to that might you be facing?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Lipton. I do not feel that we're necessarily at capacity. We are covering the entire state, but again, one parent mentor may cover anywhere from a portion to 15 counties. For instance, our parent mentor in the UP covers the entire UP. A lot of that has to do with population numbers and geographical location. But for some of our areas that are facing some really significant challenges like Benton Harbor, Flint, Detroit, Saginaw, those areas, we really want to be able to hire parent mentors just to cover, a city or an area that is, facing significant challenges. We want that parent mentor to be part of that community, to be trusted in that community. And the challenge that we have is funding. If I'm being honest, it's just the funding to be able to hire those parent mentors.
So that was Ms. Lipton. That was an explicit answer to your question, and that was an implicit answer to Mr. McMillan's question by Ms. Littleton. I just want to be clear. That was really one answer to 2 questions. That was unusually efficient, Ms. Littleton. Ms. Lipton, back to you.
Yes. So what might? So you added 5 to how many? So what is your grand total?
We are at 22 parent mentors currently.
Okay, 22 parent mentors for the state. And what would best practices tell us that number should be, if you know?
I do not know the answer to that question, Ms. Lipton. I would just say that we need to have parent mentors that would be able to take, to work with as many families as they can, but not feel overwhelmed. A lot of our parent mentors work part-time. I believe we only have 5 that work full-time. So being able to, juggle a part-time job and plus their own families, they're stretched very thin.
It strikes me that that's rather light. I don't know if other states use a similar model. Special education tends to be rather state-specific. But it seems to me you're talking about, 83 counties, 22 people, one person on average covering 4 counties seems to me to be on the light side. So I'm just curious if funding wasn't an issue, and I'm not suggesting that, God willing, we might get to that point at some point in the state when we're not talking about needing more money, but would it be perhaps, doubling, tripling, quadrupling that number?
Yeah.
Or any idea whatsoever?
I would say,
because we are talking about benchmarking, so it's always good to know where you're going. to sort of chart a path.
Let's do this. It's a good question. Let us reflect upon it. It requires some measure of thinking, and I don't want to put Ms. Littleton on the spot any more than she already is. Let us reflect upon it, and it's good time to ask the question because we are moving into a state budget process. So it's a timely question. Thank you. Presenters, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you. Board, our board president is not with us today, so there'll be no report from the board president. Report of the state superintendent will be brief. Congratulations to Dr. Pamela Pugh, who's been named Central Area Director for the National Association of School Boards of Education, NASB, which makes her a member of the NASB Board of Directors. So if you have issues with NASB, Dr. Pugh is available at congratulations to Dr. Pugh. It has been a busy few weeks in the department. You heard about activity substantial around MTSS, around special education. On October 19th, we had our virtual continuous improvement conference entitled Equity and Stakeholder Voice. We talked about voice earlier, making education more engaging and relevant for students, families, and educators, attended by more than 600 educators across the state. On October 27th, we had Building Bridges, Building Silos, a social and emotional learning conference attended by more than 250. On October 27th, approximately 100 people attended the Partnership District Networking meeting from our 24+ partnership districts. And finally, on October 28th, I mentioned briefly, we had a conference on the role of diversity in the literature that we teach. Conference that we had on diversity in literature was 1,900 attendees in February. It was 1,200 attendees on October 28th. And yes, we did hear Nikki Giovanni, and yes, she did recite ego tripping, including the beautiful line, "I am so hip, even my errors are correct," a line which I love. Congratulations to Ms. Kara Lougheed, our 2019-2020 Michigan Teacher of the Year, and Mr. Owen Bondano, our 2020-2021 Michigan Teacher of the Year, who were honored with other state teachers of the year from their cohorts in Washington, D.C. in the last month. Our 2021-2022 Michigan Teacher of the Year, Ms. Leah Porter, will be similarly honored in Washington next fall. Ms. Porter is here with us today, Board, as you are aware. She's a third grade teacher at Wilcox Elementary School in Holt Public Schools. Ms. Janet Swarthout, Region 5 Teacher of the Year from Caro Community Schools, is also joining us. Ms. Swarthout teaches speech, debate, and drama, a woman after my own heart, to students in Caro High School. It does not get any better. Teachers of the Year, welcome. It is such a pleasure to have you helping us remain focused on the most important things about schools.
My apologies. That was a quick pivot, so I was like, "Woo, we're up."
It was a quick pivot. I got my oar in the water substantially earlier.
No worries at all. Just was like, "Whoop, it's our time." All right. Thank you, Board, so much. I am incredibly excited to have this lovely educator sitting next to me, Ms. Janet Swarthout, Region 5 Teacher of the Year. As I mentioned last month, one of the best parts of this collaboration is, and this process as being Teacher of the Year, is getting to work with regional teachers across the state and getting the opportunity to collaborate monthly with one of them. And so we are going to be presenting today on a major passion area of Ms. Swarthout and myself too. We had many that we shared, but this one was very specific to both her and I. So without further ado, I'm going to give her the floor to introduce herself a little bit to you. Janet?
Okay. Thank you for the honor of being here today. I am in my 44th year of teaching, and I love it. I love it as much today as I did when I first walked in my classroom door. Not the same classroom, but I still love teaching. I still have a passion for what my students can do and what they can learn. It's such an exciting field to be in. I'm a graduate of Western Michigan University. Go Broncos! I also have graduate degrees from, I've taken coursework in Baylor, University of Northern Colorado. I love to go to school almost as much as I love to teach. So I have gone to school all over the country. I teach public speaking, drama, debate. I coached competitive debate for about half of my career, had state and national titles, a great experience to travel and teach students how to speak and how to think critically, and to present arguments in a positive way. Transitioned, I still teach debate, but I transitioned into drama because it just seemed the natural thing to do. And as you can see, we've been doing some productions here. The one that you see on the stage in the upper right was last spring. My students definitely felt after being in the pandemic, they had a need. And I decided we would do Shakespeare in the parking lot. So we did Taming of the Shrew out in the parking lot, and our community supported us tremendously. We packed that parking lot, and people were generous. We did it for free. Shakespeare now is free in the public domain, so I didn't have very little expenses, and they were very generous to us, and I love it. Right now, we are in the midst of the musical Chicago, and I have dress rehearsal tonight. So I will be heading out of here and heading to dress rehearsal for our performances. I'm also an adjunct professor for Saginaw Valley University, where I teach communications there as well. 2 children, opera singer, graduate of Bowling Green with an MFA, and I have a son who's in the military, first lieutenant, and he's going to graduate school at Kansas State in accounting. I have spent most of my time, almost all of my time, teaching oral communications, and it is a passion of mine because I believe it is an art that we are losing. I feel a bit like a dinosaur these days because as I watch my fellow speech teachers retire, they are not being replaced. And I see how detrimental that is becoming to students around our state. So I was delighted when Leah was telling me all the things that she tries to do in the lower elementary classes. I really believe basic communication skills are needed for basic survival. It's imperative.
So today, Janet and I are going to be talking about how we encourage face-to-face communications in the classroom and the importance of that in a time where technology has become increasingly more predominant in our lives.
Technology is totally awesome. Couldn't have taught this last year. Oops, can you get that to go? There you go. Could not have taught this last year without all the technology we've had available. And I am an advocate. One of my master's degrees is in educational technology. I love it. It's wonderful, except when it's not. What I see in so many places is students not talking to each other because they're on the phone. People in meetings not necessarily listening because we're on our phones or our devices. Even families at dinner time have their phones with them or some kind of a device that prevents them from having that face-to-face communication that is so imperative to our mental, emotional, and educational systems that we have.
So there's lots of research varying in all different age ranges, and some research around elementary students, and this was taken and developed over the pre-pandemic time, but that elementary students spent 7 hours a day on a screen, which I have to tell you, when Janet and I were discussing that, was incredibly disturbing to me, thinking about the fact that children would also be spending hopefully 7 days in-person classroom pre-pandemic as well. Knowing the nature of what the pandemic has done in terms of our socialization and the amount of remote learning we have, I can only imagine, though there isn't research around this yet, that number was increased tremendously over the time of the pandemic and probably still right now.
Mm-hmm. We find in our high school that 11% of our students say they can't survive, they can't stop without using their devices. I have hanger in my room that they're supposed to come in and put their phones in. They feel so insecure if they don't have their phones literally on them. What happens if we have an active shooter? I've got to be able to text my mom.
Oh.
Yeah. That is the thought that goes through my high school students' heads. They are worried about things like that. And so even though I have the hanger there, I'm very cognizant of the fact that most of them will have them in their pocket. And I am on the lookout to make sure that they are not on them in class, because they do feel addicted to them. They feel anxious without their technology. They have this urgent need to check their social media because somebody might be saying something about them. And honestly, the change in education over my years is I see largely changed due to the social media and students having the access to the phones on them, the smartphones all the time. It almost makes me wish we could go back to the day of the flip phones, and so students could text their parents but maybe couldn't do all the other things. In the college level, we find that our students there also have issues with their technology. The study here shows from June of 20 that 20% of them will spend their class time on their devices if they are allowed to. Our communications department at SVSU has a policy that they are not allowed to have their devices out. But I will still catch them. Now, I'm not the police that go around and take phones away at the college level. They're mature adults. They need to make decisions, and they need to pay the consequences for those decisions. But I did my own little informal study with my last exam that I had just 2 weeks ago. And so I've been watching my students, and every time I see them on a device, I have a little check mark. And so I check to keep track of who's on their phones. Then with our last exam, I looked at their grades. And I found that the students who were using their devices scored anywhere from 8 to 22 points lower on their exam. So what does that mean? They're not paying attention to what we're doing in class, even the activities, because they're on their phones or their devices too much. I plan to share those results with them next Monday in class, because I think they need to know how this is hurting them so that they make better choices.
Start that, right?
Yes. Okay. The average person struggles to go more than 10 minutes without checking our phones. Now, I'm going to be honest, I was watching today. And I watched some of you. You went about 10 minutes without checking your phones. Some of you were perfect. I didn't see you check yours at all. But that probably is very accurate, even for those of us in here today.
Ms. Swarthout, be careful. We control the microphone.
I have to say, though, that when Janet and I were speaking about this research, it was a time for myself to be reflective upon our devices, and really how I know, especially in my home and the way that now we have access to being connected to our jobs and different things all the time through our smartphone devices, that I am so cognizant of trying not to engage in that. Even though I hear that ping or I'll hear that vibrate, and it's something that actually happens in your brain, like, oh my gosh, what's going on there? Especially when I'm around my child, like that I want to be present with him. But it is something that you have to push back against. And after our discussion, it was really like a wow. I've always tried to feel that way, but how much it is become almost an addiction or a piece where we feel like we have to respond regardless of the time of day if we are given information, especially if it has to do with our work. Okay.
Our increased technology has led to a decrease in face-to-face. This is where the students at lunch, instead of having those conversations, they're on their phones. They will text each other if they are sitting at the same table. Perhaps to talk about somebody else. I think it's played a big part into the bullying situation that we see sometimes happening. The decrease is how much they actually spend talking to each other. They don't ask as many questions in class. They don't have the confidence anymore to ask questions. I have had students who will email me a question if they're on their Chromebook rather than raise their hand and ask it in class. It's diminished our interpersonal skills, how we relate to one another and how we speak with one another. Like basic eye contact. They don't look at each other eye to eye. They don't know when it's time to pause and let somebody else speak. They think if they have something to say, they can just shout it out. They don't know that you're supposed to wait until it's your turn to talk. They have difficulty actually listening to each other. They're too busy thinking of the response they have to give, and they don't truly listen to what each other is saying. And one of the biggest things I see is an increase in social anxiety. I've been teaching for many years. I've never had the amount of students who are afraid to get up in front of each other. For a 1 minute, 2 minute little talk about yourself in class the first day, I have students who are petrified to do that now. And I've never had that. And I'm seeing it even at my college level, where students who have not had access to having me as in high school, they don't have a speech program perhaps in their or a communications class. They go to college and they are terrified to get up in front. I spend a lot of time meeting students before class to work them through their anxiety.
In the primary setting and teaching at kindergarten for over 15 years, I've watched a shift in many ways. And a lot of the things that Janet has seen at the secondary level are the same things that I would see with kids entering school, that many had less interpersonal skills in communication. They didn't know how to take turns, how to play games, social play, basic problem-solving skills, and being able to communicate with each other when there was a problem. Another piece of that as well is with an increase of having technology in the hands of little learners is that they are so used to the visual imagery and the ability to change and pivot activities so quickly that the engagement in oral language instruction, like in front of the classroom, like teaching, I have witnessed over years has been significantly more challenging. It's like putting on a show all day long to keep those kids engaged.
So we need our oral communication skills now more than ever.
So there are so many benefits to oral communication. One is developing that sense of empathy, having a communication and a conversation with someone else in order to understand their perspective. Of course, those conversation skills, the more that you do them, the better you get at them, especially when we're developing and establishing those in the classroom. Also, those listening activities, being able to engage with someone and listen in terms of directions, and then the speaking and the directives of how those work in the classroom as well. The use of respectful vocabulary, the power of the pause, which I will be the first to admit I am terrible at, an only child in me. I don't like to have to wait to share what I have, but that power of pause gives a time for reflection and be able to develop what you want to say in a respectful and clear way. And, of course, that ability to practice speaking and listening in natural settings. I mean, being in front of us allows that opportunity all the time, and making sure that we're providing that for kids. It builds self-confidence and poise, and, of course, that ability to both listen and take turns back and forth. So when we think about that, really then, as educators, what can we do to increase classroom communication opportunities? And this is some of my students from kindergarten, by the way. I just love this picture so much because they're sharing about writing, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So when we think about that, there are Common Core state standards that are all around oral language communication. And, they're not always highlighted when teachers are doing professional development. Typically, it would be around ELA, math, science, social studies. We don't always address those oral language standards specifically. But there needs to be intentionality for teachers if we believe in the power of oral communication to do that every single day. The ways that can happen at the elementary level, show and tell talks, which seems like something like, yes, we all do show and tell, but that's not something that is done predominantly outside of the kindergarten classroom. But the time and ability for students to be able to share on a topic is really the foundational cornerstone of developing presentation skills at the elementary level. If it's bringing something in specifically that they share, if it's a star of the week where they're presenting about themselves, if it is a specific topic that a teacher provides and then the kids are bringing in things that go with that. It's just the structure show and tell not only allows for students the opportunity to present to their peers, but it also allows the opportunity to teach kids how to listen and ask questions about things. And it really starts to develop that oral language practice across all grades. starting with those foundational pieces. One of the things that really made me so excited to do this with Janet, who is just like an expert in communication, is something that I developed called storytelling time, but really it's the idea of using oral language as a catalyst for pre-writing skills. There's a book that's a very popular book with primary teachers called Talking, Drawing, Writing, and it really emphasizes the idea that kids like to tell stories, but that there needs to be intentionality in how you guide that story in oral language storytelling in the classroom in order to develop it into writing skills. And so what I did over several years with my colleague is we developed a parent partnership where we were sending home an activity that was a pre-topic of a writing activity we're going to do the following week, and we'd give some guiding questions to parents, and they would have the opportunity to have this conversation with their child, which was kind of that pre-writing experience with them for kids to start to organize their ideas on that topic. They would do a little drawing to remind them of what they were doing, and then they would bring it back in, and then they would share that with a peer. And what we found was their writing grew exponentially because they were able to talk about the topic, they were able to form their ideas, they'd had that pre-time to think, and also had the opportunity to present it to both their parents and a peer. It is really one of my passion projects and something that I know has continued to develop on the years in my own elementary building in developing that pre-writing time. Ultimately, you know, when we think about that, it's just providing that intentionality of experiences for elementary students to talk and engage both with a peer and at a presentation level.
In middle school, there are tons of activities that teachers can do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an English teacher. Although there are listening and speaking requirements are enfolded into the curriculum for English, these can be done in social studies. They can be done in math. They can be done in any class that you are teaching. Things like emotion awareness, doing emotional charades where students practice. What do you do when somebody says something mean to you? Practice how you can respond to that. Practice how you can say something respectfully to somebody and disagree with them. There are so many different activities, 2-minute talks, popcorn storytelling where one person starts a story and then they learn, again, the power of the pause and when to take turns and how to continue telling a story that way. In the high school, my class is labeled speech and everybody goes, oh, I got to give speeches. It really should be called oral communications because we do give presentations. But I work on job interviewing. That is an oral communication. You are going to be face-to-face with people. It might be one, it might be a panel. And you need to be able to present yourself in the best light. And you need to be able to listen, and you need to be able, when they ask a question, determine what is the answer that that employer wants. That takes practice. We learn how to disagree respectfully. It's an art that I think has been lost after attending a few of our local board meetings. You need to support your own views, yes. You need to learn how to be able to support your own views and to support your views with evidence that has been fact-checked. But you also need to be able to listen to people that you don't agree with. Listening does not mean that you agree. Listening means you're being respectful and use that time to come up with your responses back to that argument. So learning how to disagree respectfully is important. You need to learn how to make presentations in a professional manner. I enjoyed our previous our previous speaker from the Michigan Factor, I think it was called, where she called it the 6 C's. That's exactly what I teach. And my students at Carroll are lucky because I spend all my time teaching those. Our English teachers don't have to spend their time doing this because I'm already doing it for them. And I may not I am not the most popular teacher in school. I'm the one they dread. But I am the one that 4 years later, they come back and say, Ms. Swartout, I got an A in my college class. Ms. Swartout, I was in the military and had to give a presentation, and I aced it. Ms. Swartout, I have a job now, and one of my former students now owns a car changing. He changes tires, and you buy tires from him. He says, Ms. Sorda, I never thought I would use your class at all, but I use it every day when I'm talking with my clients. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to have been in education 44 years, and believe it or not, I'm not ready to hang my hat up yet, even through a pandemic.
We are so glad that you're not.
Still love it. If you can just communicate, you can get by. But if you can communicate skillfully, you will work miracles, and you will get places that you never dreamed that you could be.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, I'm just so in awe of you. All right, I'm just going to share a quick little Michigan Teacher of the Year update. I wanted to start adding these in where I get to share with you a little bit about what I've been up to. And so I visited a district near right here in the Lansing area, St. John's, and visited both Gateway and Oakview Elementary. I was invited there by the principal of Gateway to visit classrooms and do some collaborative work with their math and literacy coaches. The district has been working to develop curriculum maps that use integration of social studies and science, embedding them right into their ELA curriculum while adhering to all the Common Core state standards. The work they are building is, it's authentic, engaging, and is led by their incredible coaching team there that goes directly in the classrooms to help support teachers in that growth, and the teachers are actively involved in building that curriculum. It really was an incredible day. Some of the highlights I got to go to several classrooms, which was so much fun, but I got to go to Mrs. Ritter's kindergarten classroom where they were making text-to-self connections with 3 different anchor stories. That you can see there, the good egg, the bad seed, and nerdy birdie, and they were making those connections to their own feelings. Then they had an opportunity to get into their own book boxes, find things that they could connect to with their feelings. My favorite was a student that got up and shared about a nonfiction book that showed a pack of wolves eating another animal, where the student enthusiastically proclaimed, I connected with the wolves because this is how I eat when I'm hungry. It was one of those moments in kindergarten that I will miss because those moments happen all the time, but it just made my little kindergarten teacher heart smile. I got to visit a few classrooms that were doing math. One was Mrs. Keel's 3rd grade classroom, where she gave a challenging math problem involving area. She had partners working together with manipulatives, working on teamwork and communication to solve the problem, to connect their understanding of multiplication and its relationship to area. And then I sat in on a 5th grade lesson with Mr. Furden, where he was demonstrating a math talk. And the systems and discussions he had in place to discuss a complicated 3-digit multiplication problem was truly a masterclass in how to engage students in math talks. I want to bring every single teacher I know that is working in math talks to go see him, because the notes I took while I was in there for that 15 minutes was just incredible. It truly was a tremendous experience. They invited me back the next day to join in through Zoom for their professional learning communities with kindergarten and 1st grade, and I got to brainstorm with the kindergarten teachers on integrating science into their ELA curriculum for their next unit, and it was just a dynamic experience all around. As you know, Casey Hook, Region 2 Teacher of the Year, was here with me last month. I got to go visit her shortly after she was here with me at the board meeting, and it was so much fun to spend the day with her at the middle school, and I was able to visit the elementary school as well. I sat in on her Real World Habits class, where they were currently examining the work of Sean Covey and his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. But the lesson was specifically focused on time management and schedule building, with the idea of putting your must-dos, your big rocks first, and then filling in all the rest with the smaller rocks or your choice activities. The soft skills and intentionality of her instruction, I just watching her with her students, I just knew would propel them to a level of success. I learned a lot. I was like, boy, I need to be prioritizing my big rocks. I want to put my small rocks in first, but those big rocks are the most important. I also had an opportunity to visit their elementary building. I got to sit in on another kindergarten classroom where I got to see incredible independent stations happening with after 7 weeks in school. I was just This teacher was just like, oh, amazing. Her name was Mrs. Buckley, that she just had independence for her students already, just unbelievable. And then I also got to sit in on one of their data meetings for first grade, which was very interesting, the way that they have their teachers engage in the data and coming up with causal theories on how to help best support their students. It really was so much fun, and my intention is to visit every single regional teacher this year. I'm going to go see Miss Janet on Friday to go see her show as well. And then finally, I got to visit Camp T after they were here in September. I reached out to them. Thank you, Dr. Konishnak, for helping me get that connection. If you have not been, you need to go. It is amazing. They spent all morning with me. I got to tour the entire camp. I learned so much. I'm going back this summer to volunteer when they have campers back in person, but it truly was amazing. Jill, Matt, and Dan, who are the 3 permanent employees that work at the camp, were just delightful. It was truly one of the best experiences I've had in a really long time. And so go if you get the chance. So that's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Teachers of the Year. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Weather, I will tell you, if you had not told us that you were a teacher of speech, debate, and drama, we would never have known. It was completely disguised through your entire presentation. So we really appreciate you helping bring to life what you do in classrooms with children, not simply day to day, but year to year as well. It's enormously instructive, and it's also instructive to see what we used to do that we're returning to, that we got away from in certain regards, and that we're coming back to. I remember clearly when I was growing up that you had to do public speaking. It was required. You didn't get to bag it. You didn't say that you were doing public speaking with your thumbs. You had to get up in front of people. You had to recite poetry. You had to recite a short story. You had to recite an original oration. It was required, and I'm not talking about for NFL speech and debate competitions, which is very important. Former speech and debate coach myself, but I'm talking about part of the normal curriculum. And so returning to some of what we used to do and what was valuable at the time, not simply to improve speaking, but to improve those social and emotional skills, just ordinary interaction between 2 human beings, which is so important. Advocating for yourself, being able to push back and say, that's not okay. Okay? Not okay. How cool is that? Really, really important. And, some people think it's newfangled. I think rather not. I think it's old-fangled in certain ways. Perhaps repackaged, but certainly something that is integral. Our young people need to know how to work interpersonally, and they can't do it solely with their thumbs. So we appreciate it. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So board members, we are on the home stretch. The next item on today's agenda is the state and federal legislative update. And here to do that state and federal legislative update is our outstanding Director of the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, Mr. Marty Ackley. He will lead the state and federal legislative update. We will also hear from Ms. Lipton, our chairwoman of the State Board of Education Legislative Committee, and Dr. Pritchett, a report on no report.
I have no report this month.
No report from Dr. Pritchett on NASB. Mr. Ackley, to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. That's a hard presentation to follow. I'll try to do my best to communicate clearly and appropriately. The State Board Legislative Committee met on November 4th. We discussed a number of legislative initiatives and actions going through the state legislature. I will leave that to Ms. Lipton to discuss in further, but to give you a little update, the Senate Education and Career Readiness Committee met today. They took up testimony on a package of bills regarding dyslexia. There are 4 bills, Senate Bill 380 through 383. One requires dyslexia screening and supports in alignment with the grade 3 reading law and MTSS. 381 requires teacher prep programs to include dyslexia screening and teaching instructional methods. Senate Bill 382, teacher professional development required to learn the latest evidence-based instructional methods for reading. And then Senate Bill 383 creates a dyslexia advisory committee appointed by the state superintendent. So those have their first hearing in the Senate committee today. We've been working with the sponsors on that for several months, and I'm trying to get close to a package that will work for everyone. Another update is that there was a package. There are 4 bills, 2 House bills and 2 Senate bills, creating what's called the Student Opportunity Scholarship Act. Those were passed in the legislature on a partisan basis. The bills were vetoed by the governor last Friday, I believe. Now, a petition drive to sidestep that veto is being organized. It needs 340,000 signatures across the state, which accounts to 8% of the voter turnout in the last gubernatorial election, which is required. And to get those 340,000 signatures to basically put the language in those bills into a constitutional amendment, then the legislature can pass those without a threat of being vetoed by the governor. So that's the next move by that initiative.
No, you mean a citizen initiative.
Citizen initiative.
Not a constitution.
I'm sorry, I misspoke myself.
Yeah, that has to go to the people.
And so there are several other issues that were brought up in the legislative committee, and I'll pass it off to Ms. Lipton, who's the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Ackley. We met, and in addition to discussing potential strategy with respect to the Opportunity Scholarship legislation, ballot initiative, and also there's a third component of this, which is a court case that was filed in federal court by the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, I believe, is there representing the plaintiff. And so we discussed some ideas. We did not come to any definitive conclusions, but I did give the members of the committee some homework and to look at the language of the bills, look at the language of the ballot initiative, if and when it becomes available, as well as to look at some or all of the statements in the complaint, so that, because it is there's a lot to unpack on the issue, and I thought it would be important for the members of the committee to familiarize themselves with the breadth of the 3-part strategy, if you will, that is happening now in the state. Dr. Rice already shared with us the MDE strategies regarding the teacher shortage, and we discussed and will continue discussing at the legislative committee what we might bring back to the full board with respect to how and when we might be further inclined to support or put forth certain of those measures. We also discussed a couple of issues that were referred in our prior meeting by Dr. Pugh, and we discussed and will continue to develop or continue to discuss the issue of a statement or resolution or or not on the issue of the freedom to teach issues like racism in our schools. And so that is a discussion that I would like to develop more opinions at the legislative committee agenda. And then lastly, we also discussed, I forgot to mention, we were also glad to have Dr. Pugh join us at the meeting. We had also had been referred to us for discussion and exploration, a statement regarding masking in schools, in addition to what sort of response we may refer to the larger board on the issue of President Biden's vaccine mandate, which has been clarified now in a number of venues with respect to what it means for, in particular, public employees and school employees in the state of Michigan under the MIOSHA plan that's in place in the state. So that was the breadth of discussion that we had. And I would open it up now to any other questions or comments from the board members.
Board members, wide open.
So I guess I can.
Dr. Pugh, please.
So I did send over 2 proposed statements, resolution, or language for discussion. One is regarding, as Chairwoman Lipton mentioned, the freedom to teach about racism and to teach accurate and true history about our country. And then the other is regarding a layered approach to addressing the persistent COVID pandemic and how we address it in our schools, the continuous increase of outbreaks in our schools, and that as I'm looking at this, it's in track changes, and that's because it started from a proposed language that Board Member McMillan had written. So both of those have been sent to your email addresses, and I'm up for discussion and input on those.
Dr. Pugh, would you like to ask for input on them individually or?
Individually.
Yes, okay. So which one would you like to begin with?
I will start with, I don't know, let's see here. Let me pull them up.
Dr. Pugh, when were they sent?
They were sent while we were sitting here at the table.
Okay. So I've not seen them.
Okay.
Point of order. I mean, I guess either resolutions are presented to us or discussed in the legislative committee. I don't know that this is the appropriate venue to start, crafting resolutions. I mean,
I understood. Yeah, I don't think that the spirit is to craft the resolution here, but rather to seek input into it. There's no vote today, as I understand it, but you seek some feedback associated with the draft. So I think it's really in that spirit. I don't see it being overly long. It doesn't have to be long at all if there's no feedback. But I do think it's an opportunity in public for people to reflect upon a work in progress.
I mean, I just got it a little while ago, so I'll look it over.
But again, no vote, no expectation of a vote.
Okay.
No arm twisting for or toward anyone. Dr. Pugh.
If I can just give a little bit of clarity. So I have these two items I've brought up. As a matter of fact, I was reviewing the footage from our August legislative discussion, and I asked the question around both of these issues, but definitely around the CRT and the two bills that have been proposed. And so and then I asked again last month, which would have been October. And so what I was directed to do is to take it to the legislative committee. So when I took it to the legislative committee, what was discussed is that I would put together some draft language, and this is around the CRT. What I said is I would put together some draft language, and then I would get it to Dr. Rice get it out by Monday. So I think that there was a little bit of confusion because I did get it to Dr. Rice and Cassandra, but I didn't send it to the full board by Monday, yesterday. So what I said I would do is just bring it here for us to be able to discuss it. The previous language I sent, I think, in October. So again, the point is to just begin the discussion around the topic. And I can start with the whereas language around racism. And then I think we can decide how we want to proceed today and or through the legislative committee. And I mean, it would be up to the chairwoman, who we can't see right now. But
No, she's here.
Oh, okay. All right.
Our monitors are just gone.
We have some external monitor issues, but
Okay.
for those of you who would like to see our chairwoman,
No.
there she is.
Just as long as she's there, because I don't want to speak. But the process I would imagine is we could start the conversation here,
and I think,
and then be directed as far as how do we continue the conversation. But I think with all that's going on, with the two bills that are being proposed, and the discussion around this topic, that we should be speaking to this issue around how our educators educate around these social study, these curriculum issues, and again, just making sure that our voice is out there on these very critical issues as a body, because I think we've all spoken, many of us have spoken, some of us have spoken as individuals. And so I can begin the language. Did I hear it?
I would just like to just speak just in general that the language of the House bill in particular I think is very, very problematic. I think I've mentioned it before, but the way that it's written is in my mind so incredibly vague that that it would, I think, by its very nature, have a chilling effect on teachers who might simply avoid certain issues because of just not exactly knowing what is and isn't permitted. I was extremely alarmed to learn that a similar in concept bill that was actually implemented in the state of Texas had the effect of a professional development session centered around implementation of the bill that resulted in an educator being advised to provide an opposing view of the Holocaust. And I'm simply, I'm not sure that that the person that advised that really thought it through. But the fact that a bill that would create that much lack of clarity amongst teachers about what they can and can't teach, such that the result might be having to struggle to find an opposing view to the Holocaust, I think is quite troubling. Again, that was a Texas bill that was signed into law, I recognize, but having examined the verbiage of both, the language of the House bill, if in fact that is the way that the legislature is intending to go, suffers from, in my opinion, the same level of lack of clarity and really lack of focus on exactly what it is intended to prevent, and might have the effect of preventing a lot more speech than it is intending to stop. So I think that as a board, it may in fact be appropriate for us to develop some sort of statement about truth in teaching. So that is just a very broad statement.
So other comments by board members on the first of the two drafts? Any other reflections? And again, if you don't have them now, you don't have them now, but it's an opportunity for an oar in the water in advance of a legislative committee reflection on the same draft. Mr. McMillan.
Well, just quickly, I mean, since the implication that Ms. Lipton just made was that some Republican is advocating for Holocaust denial, I'll just have to say that that's a typical tactic of the left, is to plant somebody like that. So I would not be surprised if someone from the left actually said that and was tried to be portrayed as some kind of conservative. I would just also say that, just quickly, I mean, we have heard and know that there are some kids that are being told that white people are suppressors, including white children. So, I understand there's, nobody has any, I know that there was a caller and some on the left portray this effort on stopping CRT as somehow wanting to deny slavery or racism. Nobody denies that. I mean, there's very few, and that's not, that's a typical painting by the left, trying to throw up straw men. That's not the issue at all. It's that when, it's clear and, teachings come out, PowerPoints are shown in Livingston, I think I saw one, and other areas where, whether it's instructing teachers, there's a real concern. If I don't know how you craft, you're not able to and tell kids that, they're suppressors, they're part of the oppressors, and your parents are too. I don't know. I mean, we're seeing it creep in. Apparently self-policing to try to stop that stuff isn't working. So, I can understand there's concern, and I don't know exactly how to do it without, saying that you can't teach facts. I don't think anybody wants to stop that, even though that's kind of the portrayal of some of the left. But, there's concern. So I'll just, give that input.
Okay. And just a note that this board has gone on record as being in favor of or in opposition to different legislation in the past. I think that's completely legitimate. I think that there's a value if this board wants to weigh in on the two bills in question, one in the Senate, one in the House. I think the board not only has the right to do that, but the responsibility to do that. I share concerns with Ms. Lipton about the one, with Dr. Pugh about the two. And if that was a position that the board wanted to take, I think that's well within the board's right. I do think that there's a value to speaking to the teaching, the power of the teaching, the importance of the teaching of the full breadth of U.S. history, including those elements of history which are uncomfortable or inconvenient or otherwise searing.
And nobody says they shouldn't.
Well, that's good. So then we ought to be able to arrive at a meeting of the minds.
But that's
Ms.
not what
Snyder.
CRT is.
Can I ask for a clarification with the cards that MDE or the department put in on these bills? My understanding is the department is not in support of either bill.
The department is not, no.
Can I get a thorough clarification as to why?
Sure, we'd be happy to do that. Yeah, we'll put that in board brief.
Do we have any capacity to discuss it right here, right now as well?
Sure. We think that the one piece of legislation, the one to which Ms. Lipton referred, is overly broad, is overly vague, suffers from constitutional issues. We think that the other is...
And which one is that?
That's the House bill.
And it relates to, is it the gender stereotypes and race stereotypes?
It does, among other things, yes. Yeah. And the other, the Senate bill is punitive and would lump all manner of things under this broad rubric of critical race theory, most of which have nothing to do with critical race theory. I mean, critical race theory has become a catch-all expression to address the perceived ills of some. And it literally, I mean, we heard today about a person who was conflating critical race theory and social and emotional learning as if all acronyms mean the same thing. They don't. They have very different meanings, and people who have been in the social and emotional learning space for 30 plus years are startled to find out that all of a sudden they're engaged in critical race theory. They don't have anything to do with one another. Some people support one or the other. Some people support both. Some people support neither, but they're not related. And so what we've got now is we've got people really throwing everything they don't like under this broad rubric of critical race theory, and that's a problem. So we think that is, in part, what's going on with the Senate bill. Moreover, we believe that the Senate bill is punitive. The Senate bill would have us implement punishments toward local school districts and basically have us be, in a fashion, a state curriculum cop. There are all sorts of challenges and issues around that, particularly in a local control state. We create curriculum standards, we don't create the curricula themselves. And so those are among the issues with the bills, but we'd be happy to share additionally with you in board brief.
Could you include kind of verbatim what you wrote, what the department wrote?
We did not do an analysis for the committee. We simply put in a card of opposition in each case.
And can I just add that,
Please.
I think one last thing that kind of has thrown fuel on the fire is some things like that the Governor Whitmer's blueprint back when was it June, the presentation, and I maybe uncomfortably confronted the chairman, but nonetheless, one of the critical resources that was in that, I think it might have been removed, but it was in there nonetheless, talked about how we are now currently in a white supremacist culture. I mean, these things don't help. The case that, all is well, and we're just, teaching things, difficult areas about our history. This is talking about how currently there are oppressors in an oppressive system, and capitalism is the problem. And it's really viewed as more of a Marxist, communist, push, and I think it has its roots in it. So, I mean, I think there's a real struggle, and understandably, people are very upset about it.
Right, and I guess what I would say is, it is a local control state, and it's not surprising that you can find something regarding virtually anything in a state with 830 local school districts, 3,400 schools.
Well, that was the state thing that she put out.
I respect that, but that's different. It's one thing to have something in a report. It's another thing to have something in a classroom. And I guess my point is that there is no state curriculum. There is nothing that is lockstep within the state. So I think we sometimes sometimes this may be a little bit overblown. Yes.
I don't think it's overblown at all to state right here, right now, everybody in this room, that it is not okay for our state leader to have a blueprint that cites a resource that refers to white supremacy as if it is a foundational way to move forward in education. I hope that that's something that, even in the nuance as we continue to discuss it, that is not hard to say internally and externally. This is not a good idea. And that, in fact, we have a history in teaching of history itself, that would be exactly the foundation as to why we would not do something like that.
Well, and when I asked the chairman, this blueprint is just to kind of help guide how the $6 billion of recovery money should be used. He said yes. So it is something that systemically was being advocated for, not just here or there.
Yeah, I don't recall similarly, but I would say this, that I interact with superintendents and principals and teachers on a regular basis, and their focus is on getting young people back into the classroom, getting them back into the swing of in-person instruction. It's math, science, social studies, reading and writing. You heard Ms. Swarthout talk about the value of oral language and oral language development. It's pretty basic stuff as a rule. We're also struggling with a very profound teacher shortage in the midst of a pandemic. So I can tell you that again, I think that for the vast majority of educators, it's more on the basics, the math, science, social studies, reading, writing, oral language development, and getting through a pandemic, rather than on some of these other things that get attention. Dr. Pritchett and then Dr. Pugh.
Thank you. I appreciate, Tom, your comments about the fact that nobody is asking teachers in the field, Leah, I'm sure, appreciated that also, to not teach. I taught U.S. history in United States government. And so over these last couple of weeks, I've been going through in my head, well, would I still teach the Supreme Court cases, Plessy versus Ferguson, and then the overturn of Brown versus the Board of Education? Would I still teach that? And I'm getting those calls from teachers who, as Dr. Rice has just indicated, are dealing with, okay, we're back to in-person. We know students have had some learning loss here. We're trying to move forward. Here's the standards I have always taught. Is somebody going to come and tell me I shouldn't talk about that slavery, was in this country? And I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm saying I appreciate that.
So I can't imagine that you think you would.
But I think what's happened is, which has been, unfortunately, happened with a lot of subjects, is we've got people coming in from both sides at this point, and we do need to have a discussion about it at this table to help clarify. I'm not ready to write anything today. I need to think about it. I need to look at it. I'm glad to give you input, Dr. Pugh, as far as wording on it, as far as moving forward with it. I do want to have the discussion. I do have major issues with both bills that are currently in the Michigan legislature. I've got concerns about those. But I want us to take our time and try to get some of the noise that we're hearing from the peripheral, both sides, off so that we can focus in on what is this and what can we say as a board, hopefully together, that will try to provide some clarity at this point, or at least clarity coming from the Board of Education. Our teachers are busting their rear ends out there at this point, and they don't need this noise on the side. The administrators don't need it, but it's there. So we're the State Board of Education. We need to stand up and say, okay, let's work through this. Let's come up with something that we can all agree to. So that's where I'm at with critical race theory. I want to be methodical about it. I want to get some more facts about it. I keep hearing that, there may be school districts out there teaching it, whatever it is. Is that the case or is that not the case? I don't know, because again, I've got some of my colleagues calling me saying, I'm afraid to teach this unit that I've always taught on, and again, I'll use my example, Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus the Board of Education for the United States government. Classic lesson that you did, because it deals with racism. There is no question about it. So again, I'm asking that we take our time, we be thoughtful, and I will provide you with some feedback now that I have it on that particular issue.
So 10 seconds, and then to Dr. Pugh. Teachers have not only the right, but the responsibility to teach constitutional, statutory, and case law history.
Right.
And Plessy from 1896 and Brown from 1954 are important parts of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question. I just don't want anybody to think anybody believes to the contrary, and I don't think anybody at the table believes to the contrary. So it's good that we agree on that. Dr. Pugh, to you.
We're speaking to two bills, and let me back up, because we've been talking about this for like 3 months or more, that we need to put something out there and talk about it. And so I was responding to the discussion that we had at the legislative meeting. So I want to say that, as far as taking our time, because, and then the other piece is that we're not just talking to bills, but we're talking to a climate that is just overwhelming our country right now. And, I will be honest, people of color, myself, we feel a certain type of way about this conversation that's going on. We feel a certain type of way about people who we feel do not want our history to be included in schools and in the teaching and in a safe space such as a classroom. But there's also a certain type of feeling that we get if people are not speaking about it. So I do appreciate the conversation. I do appreciate the fact that we're moving this conversation along, and I just think that it needs to happen. Dr. Rice, to your point, you talked about what's going on in classrooms right now in the midst of COVID. And are you listening to me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But
You want a
I'm joking.
verbatim recitation?
No, I believe you. So I know you're typing everything I'm saying. So, but you talked about what's going on in classrooms at a time of COVID. But for some classrooms and some districts, it's much harder what they're dealing with. Whether we look at death rates, whether we look at how it's impacting their communities, whether we look at the teacher shortage that are in those school buildings. And that comes from systems of racism. And I think that when we talk about this discussion that we're having, we're not just talking about what the history, but we're also making sure that we are able to look at things through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if we can't say those words, that's a problem too. So I don't think that we should be skirting around that issue when we have this conversation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Anything more on this particular draft? If not, if we could pivot to masks for the remaining few minutes, and then we're going to wrap the meeting.
Yeah, again, this was, I was a little lost in the conversation because I was not here in person and not at the beginning of the meeting. But I still believe that given some of the points that Tom brought out, that as well as President Biden's, us having greater clarity around President Biden's testing and or vaccine requirements for employers, that's becoming more clear that there was a need to have this conversation. And so the be it resolved language, I'll just read that, therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education calls on the state's Director of Health and Human Services to mandate universal masking on buses and indoors at all public facilities, events for students, teachers, staff, and all school visitors, regardless of vaccination status, and each county health director to abide by the law. Be it resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education is in support of President Biden's vaccine mandate for employees, including school employees, and the vaccination of eligible K-12 students. Also in support of CDC COVID-19 testing recommendations that anyone who has a close contact exposure with someone testing positive for COVID-19 be tested within 3 to 5 days of exposure, a little bit more there, and making COVID-19 vaccine more accessible to students, families, and communities by setting up COVID-19 vaccination clinics at schools and providing COVID-19 vaccine fact sheets for parents, caregivers, and community. Be it finally resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education supports all appropriate Michigan agencies, i.e. MDHHS, Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, working with local districts so that ventilation and indoor air and water quality within school buildings is appropriately addressed. And so that's the premise of this resolution. And I do understand it's a lot and may need to be broken apart to discuss it further.
So to that point, because I think that's an important point, there are three main elements to this. That is to say, three, now therefore be it resolved. And the board could choose to consider these individually or collectively. And again, we're not making any decisions today. It's an opportunity to get a foot in the water, an oar in the water, to share a little bit about any of these. It's masks, it's vaccines. And the third piece is associated with the indoor air quality experts, or indoor air quality efforts, rather, of other state agencies which are engaged in that work relative to local public schools. So if anybody would care to share on any of that they don't feel like they've had the opportunity to share on to date, that's fine. If people are of the mind, it's 4:50, they're tired, they want to reflect upon it, we respect that too. But we're looking to get as much as we can now to help us as we move forward with the work. So I'm looking. Sorry, Ms. Lipton, I apologize. I may be the only person who can see you at this point. I beg your pardon. There are two screens that have Ms. Lipton on them. Ms. Lipton and then Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look at these as, my preference, I think I may have expressed this at the legislative committee, would be at the very least to deal with the issue of air quality and water quality, at the very least as a separate resolution, because I think that while they're all important, I feel as if that one has long-standing import for our students, given lead in water in Benton Harbor, high lead content. That's just one that comes to mind. Of course, what children dealt with in Flint. And I know the state has a response, and I don't know, given that now that there's going to be perhaps an infusion of dollars, that the board make a statement about what we believe to be appropriate air and water environments for our children to learn. So that would be, if we're just sort of sharing, I think that has such long-standing importance that I would prefer to see that one, that component broken out, if it was amenable to Dr. Pugh.
Yes, maybe for different reasons, but I'm good with breaking that one up.
Okay. And there has been good collaborative work, Eagle, MDHHS, MDE, ASHRAE, that deserves to be lifted up and supported additionally.
Yeah, and that's the big piece, is making sure that it's supported and making sure that there is that connection with all of as many schools as possible. I don't know that schools are connecting with those entities as it relates to these issues.
Well, and there's going to be more wherewithal to get it done, right? Because oftentimes you only consider if you have the financial capacity to get it done. Mm-hmm. And there is going to be more financial capacity, I believe, in the coming few years. I think that's what we found out last week with the passage of the infrastructure bill, and that's going to help not simply cities and counties, but also I think school districts as well. We'll have more to share in that regard, but that gives us an opportunity to encourage local school districts. This is a moment to think about your mechanical systems, your windows, mm-hmm. And something as simple as windows you shouldn't have to worry about. But there are districts that nailed shut their windows back in the day because they felt that they would be easier to maintain in that way. Reflect upon that.
And we really just want them to do it right.
Right.
Versus the quickest thing that comes at them. So I think working with these entities and getting that guidance and making sure that those entities are appropriately resourced to be able to do that as well.
Okay. All right. Very good. Anything more on the last of the three? Yep.
I thought it.
Cross-agency. I'm sorry. The third now, therefore, be it resolved.
Oh, no.
Is the cross-agency piece. It's the one that we've not reflected upon as much formally, and I thought that we'd dip our foot in that water now. Anything else?
I'll say this. We do have a statement on lead that I've been using and speaking to, and so we can look at that, and it does speak to us working with other agencies around addressing lead in water. So we do have a statement that we could revisit.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
And then just on the resolution itself.
Sure.
Yeah. obviously, I think it would come no surprise. I'll have problems with this. Especially with the harmful and unnecessary forced masking of students, which would be a real problem. And then, I think if you want to talk about teacher shortage, I know these vaccine mandates they always exempt the executive branch, the legislative branch. I'm sure MDE employees are exempt from it, and they would be if the state was going to require it. But if you want a teacher shortage, included in this resolution, school employees mandating vaccines, and you'll see 20 to 30% leave immediately. So you want to crash the system, follow this resolution as proposed, I guess.
Ms. Snyder.
I would just add on to that. This is all just echoing things that we've already said at this table before, so I'll be brief. But, my son's teacher was off for however many days during October, fully vaccinated individual, mask compliant teacher, got sick still. And it's just like these policies are not going to help the situation. So, and honestly, the pandemic policies are furthering the issues that we continue to circle back around to. So there's plenty of time to continue to point back to that. And the inconsistencies that are there and the holes that people don't even have to poke through to see them and to continue to be reminded of them. So
we've gotten some good reflection, some good feedback. This will help us work on the two. Mr. Grant, just a point of clarification, if I could, please. It's our understanding that if the president's vaccine mandate were to be put into effect, that we would not be excluded. We would be included. Is that your understanding?
That's correct. MIOSHA, because our state has its own state policy, MIOSHA has to issue its own rules for Michigan employers, but
we would anticipate that will be issued, if I recall correctly, in the next 30 days?
Yes, if not sooner.
Right. So the question is, would MIOSHA mimic OSHA in that regard? And of course, there are 30 days, if I recall correctly, to issue that. So we'll know on or before December 4th. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. All right. Anything more for the good of the group? Hearing none. Any comments by State Board of Education members at 5 o'clock? Ms. Snyder, then Mr. McMillan.
I just wanted to share and start a discussion on COVID dollars and how they're being allocated. The Ann Arbor Reasonable Return Group that presented at public comment today reached out to me, and I've been kind of following them all the way through since they had collected almost 400 signatures of doctors, healthcare providers, counselors, psychologists last spring in an effort to return Ann Arbor to in-person learning and not remote learning. They're one of the districts in the state that never did return to in-person, any form of it. So they have definitely experience in working through the pandemic and how it's presented in their community. There was a recent local board meeting for them where it was expressed, even though there was a slide in their presentation about how there had been $500,000 was allocated, which was 20% of this amount for learning loss for these students. So this is what the federal government says, here's the criteria for these dollars. But then everybody in their board is agreeing that, in fact, all of those COVID dollars have already gone to existing expenditures. Like the money's already been spent, and we didn't have the criteria when we spent it, but now we have the criteria, but it doesn't matter anyways because this is kind of a reimbursement. If you watch that meeting, it's very concerning to me to consider the fact that we have these COVID dollars, and one of the biggest issues through the pandemic is learning loss. And whether we have test scores or not to discuss it, we did hear this morning from the UPers that presented that it is an issue, and that for the test scores that we do have, it's very clear that students that had in-person learning are ahead in this small way that he described it. But then further, we have decades of discussion around the summer slide and research around kids, all kids, no matter who you are that when you take 2 months off, 2.5 months off in the summer, that you have a summer slide. So now we know that here we've been off school March 2020, and then especially this particular community all the way through then, even the last year, you have these dollars and a board saying, we've already spent that money, this is a reimbursement. And in fact, specifically stating that they won't be putting any of the dollars into any new initiatives, right? A new initiative would certainly be something that's targeted at learning loss, and that is earmarked through the federal government when they sent those COVID dollars to that district or through us to that district. So I'm just saying that this is a huge area of, hold on, let's take a step back and say what was just said and what really happened. This group also FOIA'd the local school district. They have not been able to gather any information about how those dollars were spent. The first FOIA was denied and rejected. The second FOIA is now in its, I think, first or second extension. So, and like they said today in public comment, if Ann Arbor can't do it, okay, so I don't know exactly what they mean by that or the layers that are to that comment, but the point is, if we have local school districts taking these dollars that have these criteria set to them, but they're viewing those dollars as already spent in a reimbursement, when these kids need those dollars to go towards new initiatives that address learning loss, that's a huge issue. So I would love to have that conversation in the coming months and just an understanding of what the criteria for those dollars were. Did those local school districts and our local school districts, is there oversight in that? Is there, what's going on here?
Yep.
So that's kind of where I feel like, and I watched the board meeting myself and read the slides, so this isn't, hearsay. So.
Couple things. One, I think this would be a great time to do some sharing about the federal pandemic relief funding, CARES Act, CRESA, ARP. Ann Arbor has not fully expended its funds, nor have most districts across the state. There are 3 large pools of pandemic relief funding. The districts have until September 30th, 2022 to spend CARES Act money, until September 30th, 2023 to spend CRESA money, until September 30th, 2024 to spend ARP money with the Tidings Amendment 1-year extension for what each federal act says. It's a lot of time and there are a lot of dollars. So I'm not sure what was said. I can't speak to that. I can simply tell you that most districts in the state have quite a bit of ARP money left, and in many cases, still CRESA money left. Unsurprising because, again, the dollars are large and they're able to be spent over a period of time. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I don't want to lose the point. We would be delighted to have Mr. Garant and others present on this important topic. It's a legitimate topic, and we'd like that. Mr. Grant, if you could, we were working with Ann Arbor, it seems to me, in the spring. Ultimately, they did return to school, if I recall correctly, first with their younger grades and then feathering up. Is that not accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right, very good. But they were one of the last to return. Yes, okay, very good. Okay.
If I can also just, Dr. Rice, to your point about the 3 separate acts, we'll have to remember that the half of the ESSER $2 of the CRESA money and all the ESSER 3 money was just appropriated by our legislature and signed into law by the governor in July. So the notion that districts have spent all that money yet is...
It's inconceivable.
It's pretty much inconceivable because they weren't, they may have plans or ideas on how they want to use the money, but the actual mechanics of having the money available, budgeting it, all that stuff, it's just, especially on ESSER.
Great point and great distinction between one's plans. Things are spoken for, if you will, and dollars are actually out the door. I can't speak to the planning process of any one of the 830 LEAs in the state, but dollars out the door, for the most part, the ARP dollars are not out the door. for the most part, districts are still working on CARES and PRESA, planning on the ARP funding, planning on the ARP spending, if you will. Okay, so it's an important point. What I heard was for agenda planning coming up, you're getting your oar in the water. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Anything more? I don't want to cut you off. But you're good. Okay, Mr. McMillan, to you and any other board members who care to share. But this is a one bite of the apple part of the agenda, friend.
Quickly on the agenda at the bottom where we tell people how they can contact, I would just add Marilyn's email. I know we mentioned it right before, but I think that might be helpful.
Okay.
And secondly, and I didn't go into it because it was 12:30 and we were breaking for lunch regarding your presentation, but the SEL part of it, I've made it clear over the years that I have concerns about SEL and some of the, I also sent an email last week about MIPHY questionnaire, and I did find it, and I did see that yeah, whatever. Yeah. So it's a something that MD has, and a lot of these questions I find extremely inappropriate. I mean, and I know they're supposed to be anonymous. I know they're supposed to be disaggregated, but nonetheless, we're advocating for kids to tell the state whether they enjoy spending time with their mother or father, whether people in their family have serious arguments, whether if they have a personal problem, they could ask mom or dad for help. In the last 30 days, where did they sleep? How often do your parents tell you that they're proud of you? When was the last time you had sexual intercourse? How young were you when you had sexual intercourse? We're asking these of 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders. I just, and then about suicide and do you have a plan? Have you ever had a plan? These are just things that I can wait for some other time. I don't want to discuss it now, but I think having, data breaches are often, I think government is notorious for not knowing what they're doing and making mistakes, quote unquote. So the idea that these are actually not going to be figured out, I mean, the questions also go into age, race, weight of the child, sex, biological sex. I mean, there's enough, and a lot of other questions that if I were a teacher, I could probably tell if I got some of, this person filled this out, and we're not going to say the name, I could figure out who it was. I know that supposedly that doesn't happen, but then again, even if these were anonymous, just the idea, and it says on the state website that parents it says on here the parents are notified. I doubt they're notified of the specific questions they're going to be asked, because I think I've seen memes and things on Facebook with some of these questions that are just wholly inappropriate, and I have a real problem with it, but we can discuss it some other time. But just in the whole area of SEL and what my friend talked about Castle and some of the clearly, I guess, Marxist ideas that they talk about, or problems, with Castle that Connie Robinson talked about, and others. I mean, there's just a real concern around SEL. So at some point, I'd like to have a further discussion about it.
Fair enough. So what I hold on one second, please, Ms. Snyder. So I just want to be clear. You'd like a presentation and an opportunity to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, but I would, I guess I could try to prepare, but there are people that I respect who I would like to have. I wouldn't just like to have one side and me be the only one, and perhaps Ms. Snyder, who would be the ones that would be refuting or whatever. I mean, there are people that have really studied this that I'd like to have a, serious discussion about. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you. Ms. Snyder.
And I would just add on to one of those questions in there that really stands out to me in terms of the boundaries that are being blurred with what happens in schools and what doesn't, is a discussion about essentially a suicide assessment. Those things should not happen in school. That's an emergency. That's not information that even a high school counselor, outside of assessing it being an emergency situation, that you would then involve appropriate healthcare institutions and systems. It should certainly not be in what it sounds like is an assignment or just a casual question even.
Well, no, I mean, it's supposed to be anonymous, and it goes into a state database so they can tell something. I'd like to know what they exactly use it for. Is it,
Yeah, I mean, yearly for a doctor to ask you that at a physical, you know, in a mini mental health assessment, it is not something that happens in schools. Unless there's a emergency type of situation where a student comes to an adult seeking help.
Right.
It's just, that is not appropriate.
So any other board members with reflections before we end the meeting?
This is board member Tilly. Is that MiFi data that they're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So some of it is MiFi data, yes. Would you like
That's
to?
what it sounded like. Yeah. So I've been on work release since the car accident, but after I get off work release, I will go back to the nonprofit that I've been running out in Southfield. And one of the things that we do is use MiFi data. They require it on a federal level because we have federal funding. Not just MiFi data, but to get data in the community. And it's more so, it is anonymous. We've also done, before Southfield Public Schools, because we asked them to collect the MiFi data. Before that, we did 4 core measures data on the kids. You know, it's anonymous, just like MiFi. And it asks some of the similar questions. Of course, we're more focused on substance issues, but even with the questions of suicide, it helps us to know how to tailor our programming to give services to the students. That this is an issue in this school or in this school district, and then we can tailor services to assist students. And of course, we don't target students because we don't know who those students are, but we can, and we do, we disseminate the data so that parents can know and the community members can know. We even did some PSAs surrounding some of the data so that community members and parents can know that this is an issue, that, you know, there are students who have suicidal thoughts, and they're higher in this particular community, and this is something that we need to deal with together as a community. And of course, that goes across the board with the data that's found.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Would any of the other couple board members who have yet to share in comments care to share? Dr. Pugh, then Ms. Lipton.
And just to piggyback on the discussions around the MiFi data, I did receive an email from some concerned board members where there are some circulars where people are trying to just axe MiFi data. So I just want us to be aware that that's going to be on the chopping block next, or the request.
Okay.
I do want to say that I did have an opportunity to speak NASB webinar. It was a follow-up to the reveal of the landscape and the recommendations that was provided at the NASB conference, and this was to a larger audience, and the focus was on lead in water, and really did a landscape as well as recommendations based on what's shown around laws and how water is being addressed as it relates to lead in schools. So that is a good document for us to be able to use. And then a treat was participating on an EPA webinar with Detroit health and facility engineers, health experts and facility engineers that work for the Detroit Public School District. And they talked about what they're doing around ventilation and COVID in schools. And so I would love to have them to be able to present. That was a breath of fresh air, seeing how in-depth. Well, no, it wasn't. But to see how they're really addressing these concerns in their schools, it made me feel better. Cassandra and I both participated in the Continuous Improvement Conference that was virtual, and Dr. Rice did the opening, and there was great response from that, from the attendees. And the other thing that I will just say is that the presentation by Dr. Bagdasarian, I think that it just points out that COVID is still here. We still have to be concerned. We still have to make sure that our children are being protected, our educators and families are being protected, and we're doing everything that we can to keep our children in school and following the mitigation strategies that the health experts are recommending us to do. So I just want to say that, because though we're tired of COVID, COVID is still here, and we are in our most critical months.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Ms. Lipton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that reporting on the social emotional learning with students is one of the prongs of the state strategic plan. That debate would have occurred before I was on the board, but I assume that this board debated the issue, adopted the strategic plan, and from my perspective, it would be inappropriate unless you're going to revisit the entire state strategic planning process again, which I suppose that this body could do. But I think that the state strategic plan was debated, was adopted, and I think it would be inappropriate to start pulling out certain aspects of it to further debate and revisit. I believe that that is a document that would have gone through whatever process this body, before I got on this board, would have gone through. And I do think that at some point you have to take a position and live with the results, and go forward with the document that was put forward. So.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Anyone else for the good of the group? Dr. Pritchett, bring us home.
I just want to thank the students this morning, even though they were in the Upper Peninsula. I have a special place in my heart for the UP because I lived there and my father helped build that bridge. So, but it's always great seeing kids. So the more we can do that, I say, keep it up, even if it is virtual. It's great listening to the students and hearing what their aspirations and their goals are is always good. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. They were in the metaphorical upper room, at least the upper room of Michigan.
Yeah.
Future meeting dates are December 14th, 2021, January 11th, 2022, February 8th,